I think I'm live. If anybody is there, please let me know. I'm gonna check my live stream here. My OBS crashed, uh, so I don't even know if I'm live right now. All right, it looks like I am live. Uh, yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. So today I'm going to be reviewing The Road to Antinatalism by Glynos. It's been a while since I've seen this, and I'm going to be talking to Glynos on Saturday. Uh, yeah, May 8th. And yeah, I just wanted to go over this and see if I can come up with any questions for him. So let's start off with this.
Antinatalism is a philosophy that attributes a negative value to birth and states that it is always wrong to have children. Proponents of the antinatalist philosophy include Abul Allah al-Ma'ari, Arthur Schopenhauer, and, more recently, David Benatar. It's been labelled the greatest taboo, and antinatalists are often wrongly dubbed as being angsty nihilists, sad sacks, and suicidal depressives. In this series, I'm going to explore the road to antinatalism. What do you need to accept to become an antinatalist? How do antinatalists reach their conclusions? I'm also going to look at the reasons why some people don't accept these conclusions, and I'll attempt to prove why counter-arguments to antinatalism don't hold up under logical scrutiny. I'll break the road to antinatalism down into 7 basic steps, and a separate video will address each one of these steps. 7 steps are: the materialistic universe, evolution and motivation, recognizing value, nature versus logic, being born versus not being born, the step to ephilism, and a graceful exit.
All right. Let's break this up into a couple of sections here. So, the material. All right.
This series deals with the philosophical arguments for antinatalism. Antinatalism compares coming into existence with not coming into existence, and reaches the conclusion that not coming into existence is the preferable state. Antinatalism is not a suicide cult, and comments such as, "Why don't you kill yourself?" although inevitable, are neither productive nor are they welcomed. Materialism, or physicalism, is the idea that everything in existence is made up of physical matter and energy. The universe, its galaxies, stars, solar systems, planets, and everything which exists on these planets can be explained using the language of physics. Even human emotions, such as joy, despair, and fear, can be reduced to a physical explanation of bits of matter interacting with each other and electrical activity in the brain. The idea of materialism has been around for almost 3,000 years and can be traced back to ancient India, ancient China, and ancient Greece. However, the development of the Age of Enlightenment and the recent success of physical sciences such as physics, chemistry, and astronomy has catapulted materialism to being the only logically sound description of reality. The evidence for materialism is overwhelming. The consistency, accuracy, and predictability of science renders it both truthful and useful. Materialism thrives in the scientific community. A scientific experiment which includes non-physical components is not scientific. Science provides us with the purest and most reliable method of discovery and deals only with the material world. In science, if it's not physical, it doesn't exist. Almost all people accept that there is a physical world. However, the majority of people think that there's more to this universe and more to a human than simply physical matter. The idea that there is both a physical and non-physical is often labelled as dualism. Most people consider themselves to be mind-body dualists, meaning that they believe in the existence of their physical body, but also believe that there is some non-physical entity, typically a mind or a soul, controlling the body, a type of ghost-in-the-machine belief.
Saran hi there. Hello. Welcome to the live stream. I'm just reviewing The Road to Antinatalism by Glynos. I'm going to be talking to him on May 8th, so just going to review some of his material, see if I can come up with any questions. If any of you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll might ask them.
Mind-body dualists face enormous challenges when defending their position. Firstly, it's impossible to describe the characteristics of something that doesn't exist in time and space. Secondly, they would have to prove how this entity, which doesn't exist in time and space, could interact with the physical body to perform its various functions. They would also need to account for reasons why a person with brain damage undergoes vast changes in their personality and decision-making, if their personality and decision-making is held in the non-physical entity. Regardless of these problems, mind-body dualism is arguably the most intuitive explanation for what we are. However, advances in psychology and particularly in neuroscience have discredited mind-body dualism in academic and scientific circles, and it's expected to have a trickle-down effect on the masses. Many believe that intuition is far greater than education, and that humans will never fully embrace the idea of our mind being purely physical, that is a byproduct of our brain. The round earth theory is a classic example of scientific evidence and education overcoming intuition. Another argument against materialism is solipsism. Solipsism claims that the only certainty is in the existence of one's own mind. Anything else, including the external world or other minds, can never be known. The French philosopher René Descartes famously stated, "I think, therefore I am." This has become the motto of the solipsist. Solipsism asserts, "I know that I exist because I have consciousness. My senses prove that I am real. My senses are not always reliable. For example, when I dream, my senses are activated and I believe the contents of my dream to be real, but I awake and discover that they are not. If my senses are unreliable, I cannot use them to verify the existence of the external world. Nor can I use them to prove the existence of other minds, as I have access only to my own mind." It's been claimed that solipsism can never be confirmed nor refuted, that it is a type of a philosophical stalemate. Despite this, solipsism can be shown to be problematic in a number of ways. If solipsism is true, it means that I have created everything, every piece of music, literature, film, every religion, war, and genocide. Is it really plausible that my mind has invented all of this? Is it not a delusion of the greatest grandeur to hold to this belief? Wouldn't a mind capable of creating this world be able, with little effort, to break the consistencies it has set up for itself? If my mind created this world, then surely my mind can reverse the effects of aging, break the laws of gravity, escape death, and so on. Reality would certainly show itself to you should you decide to jump out of the window of your top-floor apartment and test your newfound abilities. Applying solipsism to everyday life also highlights its problems. If I one day go home and find a friend or relative in severe pain, bleeding to death, begging me to get help, and I state that I cannot objectively verify his existence, let alone the existence of his suffering and blood, the telephone which is required to call for help, the existence of the emergency services operator, and so on, this will surely lead to some pretty negative consequences. Should this friend subsequently die due to my negligence, my brain would then surely invent some police officers, a court, and a jail for myself to reside in, along with some overly friendly inmates, coupled with a feeling of discomfort in a particular area. In conclusion, we can assert with absolute certainty at least the fact that something exists. We can logically reach the conclusion that we are part of a consistent external physical universe and have an ethical obligation to recognize the consequences and potential consequences of our actions. Arguments against the physical world are tantamount to linguistic games, mental masturbation, or mental impairment. Anything supernatural cannot be proven scientifically or logically. Arguments for the supernatural, be it minds, souls, gods, or supercosmic woo energy vibrationism, rely on unverifiable anecdotal evidence, wishful thinking, and faith. Although it's not impossible for one who believes in supernatural phenomena to be an antinatalist, for many, accepting the fact that we live in a reality made up only of matter and energy is the first step to antinatalism. In the next video, I'll look at the implications to accepting this reality and how those implications push us further down the road of antinatalism.
Okay. I guess, is materialism part of ethylism in his concept? Is it a core concept for the description of reality? What else? Talked about dualism. Does one have to be a monist? Maybe. What is the view? No, they already said. Does one have to be a monist? Can you be a dualist? Well, I don't want to say like what do you have to be, but what is the descriptive claim? Yeah, put it that way. Oh, it's tiny on the screen. One sec. There, that's better. So I totally forgot what I was going to write. Oh, what is the descriptive? I can't write. What is the descriptive claim with regards to materialism? Is it part of ethylism? Yeah, I guess that's fine. Let's go on to the next one.
When you reach the conclusion that there's only a materialistic universe, you rid yourself of several psychologically attractive and powerful concepts. We lose ideas that can, according to some, comfort us in times of hardship. Ideas such as everything happens for a reason and it's all part of God's plan. Accepting the materialistic nature of our universe leaves us alone on a planet in an otherwise insignificant galaxy, with no higher power guiding us, no grand plan.
For overall films, yay! Yeah, I'm just reviewing Glenos's Road to Antinatalism and trying to come up with some questions. We just finished the materialistic universe. Then I'm going to go and just pick out some questions here to bring up chat on Saturday. Tejas, hello. Welcome to the live stream. Just reviewing Glenos's Road to Antinatalism. It's been a long time, so refreshing my memory.
No bigger picture. The idea is difficult for many to take, which perhaps explains people's reluctance to acknowledge the truth of our situation, but denial does not a truthful argument make. In a dualistic world, the big questions are easy to answer. Why is there something instead of nothing?
God done it.
How was life created?
God done it.
Why do humans have such great levels of awareness?
God done it.
How do humans recognize rights and wrongs?
God done it.
I feel like these videos still hold up to this day, and I think it's still pretty good.
Finding out the real answer requires us to look a little more closely. In this video, I'll look at what a human is from the materialistic point of view. How did human life get here? What do humans share with other life forms, and what makes us different from other life forms? I'll also touch on key points of the antinatalist argument, such as humans' tendency to project value and the nature of our addicted psychologies. So what is a human? Human life, like all life, can be traced back some 3.7 billion years. Like all life, it has a naturalistic origin. There are various approaches to abiogenesis, or the origin of life, but there is not yet a scientific consensus on the subject. Two things are certain, though. Firstly, life originated through a naturalistic process, and secondly, once life started, the process of evolution began. One thing that unites all living things is DNA. Without getting too technical, DNA is a molecule that contains...
The only thing that doesn't hold up is the references to old YouTubers that no one knows anymore.
Genetic information that allows all living things to function, grow, and reproduce. In reproduction, the DNA molecule makes copies of itself to make a new living thing. These copies are not always perfect, though, and as a result, the next living thing will be slightly different from the previous one, allowing organisms with enough time to evolve into different species. Another thing that unites all living things is its need and ability to consume energy. Energy sources include some non-organic compounds, light, and most regrettably, consuming other living things. So now we have a system where there are different kinds of living things. In order for those things to survive and make copies of themselves, some of them need to eat the other things. Those things without a motivation to survive are likely to be eaten pretty quickly, leaving behind only organisms with a motivation to survive. Now we have only highly motivated organisms left. After 4 billion years of fitness tests, we are left with only living things which have the most efficient tools for their survival, be it tools for killing, tools for evading, or tools for quick and efficient reproduction. So how did humans get here? Without the teeth and claws of a lion, a stick insect's ability to hide itself, or the reproductive rate of a cockroach, human ancestors needed some other tool for survival. Our ticket to the present lies in our intelligence. Greater intelligence allowed our ancestors to make tools, create sophisticated hunting strategies, and predict and hypothesize. As with any other tool of evolution, due to the environmental pressures, that is, things wanting to consume our ancestors, the cleverest of the cleverest survived to pass on their DNA, as did the cleverest of the cleverest of the cleverest, and so on and so forth. Our evolved scheming tool allowed us to use language to pass on information and knowledge that would ordinarily take a much longer time to learn. With language, we were able to transfer knowledge and ideas at a much faster rate, and the invention of the printed word paved the way for yet more progress. Now we could store and archive information. People could specialize in different areas of knowledge and simply add to the current knowledge base, instead of having to spend an age relearning everything that had come before them. By standing on the shoulders of giants, we could see further than anyone had ever seen before.
Hey Mark, I know this is a little off topic, but what is your opinion of Magnus Weiding? Oh. Oh. Yeah, that seems kind of... I think he's a nice guy. I have his book, Suffering Focused Ethics. I think I think it's too hyper utilitarian in terms of like how you ought to act and present yourself. And um, he has made an argument that antinatalists can reproduce, I think. It's been a while since I've read his thing on that. Let's see if I can find it. Magnus fighting antinatalism. Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't actually remember this paper, so I don't really have much to say about him, honestly. I just think I'm not too much in agreement with his calculus for utilitarianism to create more life as a way to reduce suffering. Yeah, and I think he's kind of like Brian Tomasic and takes insects into account. So more humans, less insects. And I don't know if that's correct. But he's an effective altruist. I consider myself an effective altruist, so that's cool. What else? I don't know. Is there anything specific that you have in mind? Amanda, I still maintain his book on wild animal antinatalism is like almost there. Sorry, I wish I could give you more information. I don't have much to say about Magnus. Yeah. Anyways, sorry. I'll just continue with this.
Unfortunately, knowledge wasn't the only thing that was spreading. Our first and worst attempts at reasoning, including religion...
Amanda, I still maintain his book on wild animal antinatalism is like almost there, but I don't think he still agrees with it. Ah, okay.
Superstitions and other ideas about supernatural phenomena were also being circulated. But what possible survival value could belief in the untrue bring? Whilst it remains a contentious issue, it's believed that in the absence of truth...
No problem. Thanks for answering my question. Sorry for the inconvenience. No inconvenience at all. Thanks for asking. I respect the guy. Yeah.
An untrue idea can carry with it some psychological benefits. Many see religion or belief in the afterlife as a natural defense mechanism against the psychologically crippling realization that we and all of those whom we love will inevitably die. Others...
What's your opinion on Vinding, or I don't know how do you say his name? Vinding? Yeah, what are your thoughts on him and his work?
Believe that religion propagated so successfully because those who took power realized its effectiveness in being able to control large amounts of people. It didn't stop at religion, though. The psychological disposition to placing value where none should be placed can be seen throughout the world. There is obviously some comforting and addicting aspect to projecting value on that which has no intrinsic value itself. Despite the comfort it may bring you, your God does not exist, your parents are not smiling down at you from a heaven, and your favourite football team winning has no value. Your beliefs in ghosts, karma, spiritual energy are pets, an internalization of value tantamount to masturbation.
I feel like there's a common theme where he goes after like pseudoscience and like woo kind of alternative stuff. I noticed that in the last video too.
A welcome distraction to those who cannot break from their psychological addictions. If we were to separate our rationally inquiring brain from our addictive emotional psychology, what would we see? The cold hard truth is that we are simply vessels for our DNA. The DNA's job is simple: keep the vessel alive and motivated for long enough for it to make copies of itself. A rationally inquiring brain would see that life does just four things: consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, that is the killing of things of equal value, and finally addiction. Is there
Wait. Consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. Wait. I thought it's supposed to be crap. Isn't it? Huh. Interesting. Whatever. He seems pretty dank. Why do you say that? Edward. Hi, Mark. No reference intended. Oh hi. Yeah.
Is there anything worthwhile in that?
Wait a minute. What was that? Consumption, reproduction. Consumption, reproduction, addiction. Oh, he needed to put addiction before that. And cannibalism. Well, I guess that's not part of it. Parasitism. Blech. Gary changed cannibalism to parasitism at some point. Oh. So was like this the original acronym? I guess that wasn't really an acronym for anything. Oh, okay.
Addiction. Is there anything worthwhile in that? The antinatalist would say no.
Actually, in the middle of when I was making the F list. Oh, cool.
A rationally inquiring brain would also seek to separate real value from projected value. In the next video, I'll talk about the nature of value, the imbalance between the positives and negatives, and the absurdity of nihilism.
Good, because, yeah. Do I have any questions about this one? I don't think so. Evolution and motivation. In your own words, do you have any comments worth about evolution and its relation to apholism? Yeah, I guess that's just an open-ended question for them. Oh, that's so loud. Oh my god. Sorry if that's super loud on your end, because it's super loud on my end too. I don't know why. I have it. No, that's his fault. That was... Wow. Even all the way that low, it's still super loud. Okay. My ears hurt now. Glynos is quite good. Yeah. Also, is it true that Lawrence Anton talked to Ask Yourself? Yes, he did. He talked to Ask Yourself, I think Vegan Gains, and That Vegan Lawyer, and they all had a discussion on antinatalism. I can't find a video or stream of it anywhere. Yeah, it was... I asked Ask Yourself on Twitter if there's a recording, and he said the recording software glitched. So he only has an hour. I'd like to see that hour, but I'm skeptical that they'll upload it. So I don't think we'll ever hear it, which is really sad because, yeah, if I had known that there wasn't going to be a recording or that there was there wasn't a backup or anything, I would have joined the live stream. Yeah. Oh well. It's too bad.
In the previous videos, I sought to show that any serious person would have to accept that we live in a materialistic universe, and that we got to the present day through billions of years of evolution. This being the case raises questions about value and how we distinguish between right and wrong. Without God and a moral lawgiver, is there really...
It is really sad. It's been lost. Yeah. Yeah, that really sucks.
Such a thing as right and wrong? And if there is, how do we go about recognising it? And even if we do discover value in a materialistic universe, is it logical then to take the next step and tell others what they should or shouldn't do? The religious, as is often the case, play the God done it card. Some things are right, some things are wrong, and God decides. If God says it be bad, it be bad. God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. The difficult thing here for the religious, as is often the case, is the small issue of proving their beliefs. The contradictory moral teachings within just one holy book also belie their assertions. Those bringing arguments of pure faith to the table can get their coats at this point.
I guess my other question would be, and this is just going to be random, is atheism entailed?
Nihilists and glibitarians claim that there is nothing of real value in the universe. Existence simply is, and any value placed is a human contrivance. Moral relativists, not too dissimilarly to nihilists, believe that morality is based on the consensus of a society. Society's opinions dictate what's right and wrong, and that's subject to change over time as people's opinions change. One problem with this position is that it reduces holocausts, torture, and child rape to value-neutral actions that demand no regret. Such actions could, conceivably, be morally right. This may seem like an appeal to consequences fallacy, but it's worth considering the consequences of a belief, if only to motivate one to be thorough in one's research before.
Would you consider asking Vegan Gains? Maybe he can upload it. I don't really want to reach out to Vegan Gains, but if you're up for it, yeah, give him a give him a shout. Yeah, I don't want to contact him right now.
Subscribing to a belief. The position most commonly held by antinatalists is one of ethical naturalism. Ethical naturalism argues that right and wrong exists objectively and is there to be recognised and not simply subjectively contrived. Things such as slavery and gratuitous torture are always wrong and would be wrong even if every person in the world believed them to be right. The distinction between ethical naturalism and moral relativism can be summed up as follows. Moral relativists claim that things are simply valued by people, whereas ethical naturalists claim that things...
Your voice is so soothing. Anybody tell you that? No. I've had a few people tell me I have a pleasant voice, but not soothing, but I'm glad that... I don't know, maybe because I'm tired. Thank you, though. Renegade of Rage, when he live streams, I'll try to ask him about it. Cool, yeah. Yeah, you can ask him about it in the live stream, but also he has a Q&A, and you can join him in Discord and ask him through voice as well. That might get him, or even tweet at him too. I don't know if he does Twitter. But Jasmine takes business inquiries too through email. So there's multiple ways to contact him. But yeah, good luck. I hope that'd be great if even if it's just the hour. Even if you ask Isaac, yeah, that'd be cool if you can get that up for even just the hour. We can analyze it.
Things have an intrinsic value which are recognised. As a starting point to accepting ethical naturalism, one needs to...
Are you reviewing for a future project, I take it? Oh, yeah, right. So on May 8th, I'm speaking with Glynos, and I'm going to be asking him about his beliefs in ephilism with other people. And yeah, I just want to go through this and pick apart anything that he may want to contribute to his description of reality, and yeah, just offer some points for them to discuss. And yeah,
to accept the following. A. Sentient creatures exist within a universe. B. Sentient creatures have wants and needs. C. Being deprived of wants and needs results in discomfort for sentient creatures. And D. My own welfare is of the same value as other sentient creatures' welfare. Many critics of antinatalism manage to avoid the real battleground by refusing to accept these four simple claims. Some even reach unparalleled of want. Moral relativists claim that things are simply valued by people, whereas ethical naturalists claim that things have an intrinsic value which are recognised. As a starting point to accepting ethical naturalism, one needs to accept the following. A. Sentient creatures exist within a universe. B. Sentient creatures have wants and needs. C. Being deprived of wants and needs results in discomfort for sentient creatures. And D. My own welfare is of the same value as other sentient creatures as well.
Huh. I have never seen ethical naturalism brought up in these discussions. What are people's... What is everyone's views? I don't know. On ethical naturalism. Alright. Is it entailed?
Welfare. Many critics of antinatalism manage to avoid the real battleground by refusing to accept these four simple claims. Some even reach unparalleled levels of ridiculousness in claiming that their Irish heritage leads them to avoiding committing to any truths whatsoever. I shan't waste any more time on solipsistic self-molestation here, though. The argument for objective morality is a straightforward one. Take two objects, a wall and a mouse. Take a knife and stab each object and notice how the two react. The wall will respond with indifference. The unfortunate mouse won't. With everything else being equal, stabbing walls, though strange, is morally neutral, whereas stabbing mice is morally problematic. Is this intuition? Do we simply intuitively know or believe that mice are more valuable than walls? Is it relative? Is it simply a societal...
I sometimes use that thought experiment when arguing for the value of other animals. I'm like, do you think that there is a difference morally between taking a lawnmower and mowing down a bunch of cats or dogs or whatever, or mowing your lawn whenever people bring up like, well, what about the sentient and feelings of plants and organic material? Some people go down that road. And I'm like, do you think there's a moral difference between, mowing like your grass or a garden versus other sentient creatures? And sometimes that works.
Consensus that has convinced us of the wrongs of randomly stabbing mice? Or do we need a god to declare, thou shalt not stab mice? Of these three arguments, the intuition argument certainly sounds more reasonable, but intuition isn't always a good indicator of truth. Only reason will lead us to the truth. The reason why mice stabbing is morally problematic is due to sentience. Sentient creatures have welfare. They have needs and have different qualitative experiential states. All else being equal, when a sentient animal is deprived of its needs, it's in a negative state. When it satisfies a need, it's positive. Walls don't have needs, cannot be deprived, and therefore can't be put in negative states of being. We know this both intuitively and rationally. This works across the board objectively for all sentience. Sentient life is categorically different to everything else in the universe. The needs of things which have the capacity to suffer are the only things that warrant concern. Moral relativists and nihilists are forced to believe that there is no real qualitative difference in having one's genitals gently manipulated to the point of orgasm and having one's genitals aggressively mutilated with a rusty knife.
What is with these pictures? My God.
Their position forces them to claim that the difference between these two states is one of perspective, of opinion. Extreme pain only seems bad. Executing millions of people based on racist beliefs and scapegoating is only considered to be bad. Some make the claim that suffering is bad, but only to those who subjectively experience it. While it's true that it's impossible to gain direct access to somebody's subjective experience, that does not stop one from making value judgments on their experiences. Looking through the lens of evolution, we can see the fact that our sentience is the same as all other sentience. What's bad for me is bad for every other sentient creature, and vice versa. The only distinction is seen.
Edward, are you going to debate him only on points he raises here, or ask questions outside these matters he raises? Oh, it's a discussion group on the topic of ephilism. I'm just going over this to pick anything that could contribute to that discussion.
Through the psychology lens. My subjective psychology erroneously values my welfare more than that of others, but truth can only come through rational investigation and not through bigoted and prejudiced psychology. Those who think that negative states are only negative to those experiencing them often bring up Hume's is-ought problem. They claim that one cannot prescribe actions based on descriptive facts. To put it simply, they say that it's illogical to say one should or shouldn't do something. This claim seems bogus if one accepts that certain actions are good or bad. An ought can be derived from the words good and bad themselves. To be moral, one should do good things and shouldn't do bad things. But why should one be moral? Simply put, because being moral is better than being immoral. Respecting and being careful with that which is valuable is better than smashing it with a sledgehammer, regardless of anybody's opinion. It seems uncontroversial to say that if you were to see someone experiencing excruciating pain and had the power to stop the torture by simply clicking your fingers, a good or moral person would do this. Not preventing gratuitous suffering when one easily can is an immoral or bad action. It logically follows that in this situation you should or ought to or have a moral obligation to click your fingers, and you shouldn't sit idly by without acting. In conclusion, the issue of ethics and value is key to the antinatalist position. Antinatalists claim that it's always wrong to have children is based on the problem of suffering. If suffering didn't exist, the antinatalist would have no argument. The fact that critics of ethical naturalism only seem to show up when there's something in it for them highlights their hypocrisy and lack of integrity. When you criticize acts of murder and rape, they are not heard of, but make an opinion which criticizes their selfish desires to fund the mass slaughter of animals or needlessly impose life for the purposes of playing the mummy and daddy game, and they come crawling out of the woodwork with their meta-ethics, semantics and word games, attempting to logically prove that shit doesn't smell. In the next video, I'll look at the main argument for antinatalism. I'll compare coming into existence with not coming into existence and show how coming into existence is always bad.
Alright, I don't know, I don't think I have anything. I can't think of anything in that video that popped out to add. Wait, which one are we on? Okay. Wait a minute. Oh. I think I'm... Okay.
In the previous video I looked at ethics and concepts of right and wrong. Accepting the idea that sentient beings can be harmed and that said harm is bad, we can now proceed to the meatier aspects of antinatalism. One popular argument propping up antinatalism is South African philosopher David...
That's the picture he used to represent Benatar? That's awesome. I kind of want to use that now. Yeah, that's awesome.
Benatar's asymmetry argument, in which he compares coming into existence with not coming into existence, and reaches the conclusion that coming into existence is always a harm, and has no benefits over not coming into existence. To avoid confusion, it's important to point out some things right off the bat. Firstly, there's a difference between lives worth continuing and lives worth starting. Benatar argues that some lives are worth continuing and some are not, but argues that no lives are worth starting. Reaching this conclusion advocates for not reproducing and does not advocate for suicide, contrary to what those opposing the philosophy like to pretend to believe. A vast majority of people feel that their lives are worth continuing. When deciding whether to have children or not, a decision that is criminally not given enough thought, the following thought process is quite common. I enjoy living and want to continue living. Most people I know enjoy living and they want to continue living. My child will more than likely enjoy living and will want to continue living. So having a child will be good for the child because it will enjoy living. There are three main flaws in this argument. The first is that humans are proven to be poor in evaluating their own lives. Secondly, the people making these decisions have not yet endured their inevitable deaths, so their evaluation can't be complete. Thirdly, this is an argument about lives worth continuing and not about lives worth starting. I'll cover the first two arguments in a future video. For now, let's look at the third argument. If person X is alive and has an interest in continuing her life, then continuing her life is better than not continuing it. Most of us prefer to continue living and take measures to avoid dying. In this case, we can say that living is better than not living. However, when it comes to starting lives, we can't compare simply living and not living, but rather we have to compare coming into existence with not coming into existence. Benatar's book is, after all, titled Better Never to Have Been, and not Better to Stop Being. Benatar's asymmetry argument, in short, states that coming into existence means one will experience pleasure and suffering. The pleasure is good while the suffering is bad. He continues, stating that the absence of suffering by not coming into existence is a positive, whereas the absence of pleasure by not coming into existence cannot be a negative, as there's no one to be deprived of said pleasure. Saying that experiencing pleasure is good while experiencing suffering is bad should be taken as a given. The controversy lies in the positives and lack of negatives of not coming into existence. How can we label the absence of suffering as good, but we can't symmetrically label the absence of pleasure as bad? And for whom is the lack of suffering bad, if there's no person to speak of? Of course, contrary to what opponents of antinatalism sometimes pretend to believe, antinatalists don't believe that there are actual beings outside of existence being benefited by not experiencing suffering. Benatar argues that the absence of suffering for the person who would have been is a positive, even if there's no actual person to enjoy it. But the same cannot be said for the absence of pleasure. The benefits of the absence of suffering can be understood from the point of view of an existing person. Person X can rightfully say that the absence of her pain, if she had never been born, would be good. However, she cannot say that the absence of her pleasures, if she had never been born, would be bad, as an absence of pleasure is only bad if there's somebody being deprived of those pleasures.
Edward, do you agree with the asymmetry argument, Mark? Yes, I do agree with the axiological asymmetry argument, and that's actually why I am leaning towards a type of antinatalism. Yeah.
If these claims are accepted, we can see that there are obvious benefits to not coming into existence over coming into existence. The asymmetry argument requires further elaboration, and some analogies may help to prove why the absence of suffering is positive but the absence of pleasure is neither good nor bad. Mr. and Mrs. Jones are told by their doctor that they're carriers of faulty genes, and that if they were to have a child, the child would have a 95% chance of being severely disabled and living a short and painful life. If Mr. and Mrs. Jones abstain from conceiving, they will surely be labelled as responsible people. No one could rationally begrudge their decision not to conceive in the interests of the welfare of their potential child. In this case, there is value on the avoidance of suffering, even though there's no one to enjoy the absence of suffering. Mr. and Mrs. Smith are a child-free couple who don't intend to have children at all. No one could rationally accuse them of depriving their potential child of possible happiness here. Such an accusation would be absurd. The absence of pleasure is value neutral for the non-existent. Support for the asymmetry argument can also be found when considering life on other planets. If an absence of pleasure for the non-existent was really a negative, wouldn't the lack of sentient beings on the hundreds of thousands of billions of planets in our observable universe cripple us with regret?
Okay, I don't like using this as an example. This has bit me back in the ass, even though Benatar does use it. I've had there are people out there that actually do feel sad that there isn't life on other planets. There are people out there that want to, go out into space and spread more humanity out into the cosmos. So, yeah, I feel like the more normal that becomes in common day dialogue, this may not have the same emotional punch as we think it would have, or it depends on the social circle that you're involved in. But yeah, this doesn't this doesn't necessarily always work for me.
Why don't we feel sorry for the poor Martians and Venetians who don't exist? Even if potential Martians and Venetians could live lives more pleasurable than our own, it would still not be reasonable to regret their lack of existence. On the contrary, the absence of Martians and Venetians capable of living lives with greater suffering than our own can be welcomed.
You have Elon Musk to thank for that. Yeah, exactly.
Having a child subjects that child to suffering and their eventual death, even though they may enjoy large parts of their lives. Not having that child cannot harm that child. Coming into existence has no benefits over not coming into existence for the individual, and therefore it's always better to abstain from procreating. The asymmetry argument is a compelling and airtight argument with no obvious counter-arguments, which is perhaps the reason why pronatalists often prefer to argue over whether suffering is actually bad or not. However, in issues such as child torture and child rape, the pronatalists mysteriously abandon the idea that suffering isn't bad. Despite its obvious strength, the asymmetry argument isn't the only argument for antinatalism. In the next video, I'll support the antinatalist position further by arguing that having a child is always an imposition, and that no one has the right to have children.
I don't think I have any questions on that one. Also, they're not labeled the same in the first video. Oh. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I got nothing. I don't think I have any questions about this.
The issue of rights and responsibilities is one that repeatedly comes up when arguing antinatalism. Some pronatalists argue that one has an obligation to have children. Others argue that there is no obligation, but that people have the right to decide to have children or not to have children, while antinatalists often argue that no one should have the right to reproduce. Philosophical positions which infringe on certain freedoms are often instinctively denounced as being fascist or totalitarian. How dare anyone tell me what I can and can't do with my life? However, procreative rights don't just affect parents, but also the people who will come into existence. Even if there's no such thing as a person who doesn't exist, it's still important to take the would-be people into consideration when considering procreative rights. If one could foresee a life of the worst horror for a would-be child, it's hardly controversial to say that preventing the conception of the child would constitute a benefit. The idea that philosophies should never infringe on one's freedom and rights seems ridiculous when we consider other ethical obligations and laws that currently exist. We do not consider prohibition of murder, rape and theft to be an infringement on personal liberty. Simply put, when your actions significantly affect the welfare of others, the free country line of argument becomes redundant. If you're going to cause harm, the act needs to be justified. It's often difficult to make ethical decisions, but some cases are straightforward. Let's look at some straightforward cases. Person A prefers rock music to jazz music. Person A has the right to listen to rock music. His preference does not significantly affect others. Person B enjoys rounding people up in his van and cutting their arms and legs off against their will. Person B doesn't have the right to do this. The act significantly affects the welfare of others. Person C likes whipping people, and her friend, Person C1, enjoys being whipped. C's actions may affect C1's welfare significantly, but consideration has to be given to the fact that C1 is given permission to be whipped, and as long as that permission hasn't been corrupted, C may have the right to whip C1. Person D wants to inject her child with a vaccine.
It's me. Haha, I forgot about that. Yeah, I was like, is that Amanda?
The child will feel pain and struggle, but is too young and unable to give consent. The act is permissible, though, due to the presence of an ethical justification. That is, the act will prevent more serious harm. Person E really likes playing roulette, but she doesn't have any money. Her friend, E1, is asleep and has money. Despite E1 being asleep and therefore unable to give consent, E decides to take her money anyway and go to the casino. E is known to have an optimism bias and feels sure that she will win. She's seen others lose but is sure that this won't happen to her and believes that her friend probably won't mind her taking the money. In this example, E is not ethically justified in taking the money. You do not have the right to arbitrarily risk someone else's welfare without the person's consent, even if consent can't be given. Even if he wins at the casino, her decision is still irresponsible and not ethically justified. You may have cottoned on to the fact that the decision to have children can be likened to person E's decision, although in the case of procreation the stakes are much higher and the chances of winning are almost 0%. Even if your offspring live relatively comfortable lives, suffering and death are inevitable features of life. Bringing children into existence, especially in the developed world, also guarantees making another ethical footprint. The resources we need to live comfortably come at an ethical cost, be it energy consumption, food consumption, or the use of technological devices which are unethically produced. And what about the victims of life's horrors? What consideration should be given to them? Looking at child cancer statistics alone should raise some eyebrows about the game that people who procreate willfully play. In the UK, 1 in 500 children develop cancer. That equates to 1,600 children each year. What exactly can one point to that justifies this? If you were suddenly transported to a divine dimension and could buy aspects of life using child cancer as currency, would you really be willing to give 1 in 500 children cancer in exchange for X Factor, your gym membership, your positive emotions, or your favourite football team winning?
Edward, if the chance could come up, could you mention anti-frustrationism with Glynos, just to see his stance on it, Mark? Sure. I'll do that. To Glynos. What is your stance on anti-frustrationism? Cool. Yeah, if you have any questions for Glynos or Life Sucks or Old Fan or Lath, yeah, just type it in the chat or email me and I'll ask them.
How would you explain to those 1,600
Well, I may or may not ask them. Like, I got a bunch of questions. Some of them may not be asked, but yeah, if you have any suggestions, let me know.
innocent children each year that they have to go through physical and psychological trauma just because people enjoy waving their Union Jacks at an unelected ruling elite? Does that really sound like a fair trade-off? Bringing children into this world guarantees harm, be it harm suffered by the individual or harm created by the individual. This being the case means that reproducing demands justification. Pronatalists are ethically obliged to justify their decisions. They must demonstrate the benefits of having children over not having children, or show how not having children is ethically problematic. In a world of disappearing resources, overpopulation, and more than 150 million children who could be adopted, a rational defence of procreation is all but impossible. In conclusion, it's my contention that people don't even consider these ethical questions before reproducing. In large, this is because of an erroneous view that life is generally a good thing for the majority of people. In the next video, I'll look at the quality of lives, why personal assessments of happiness and satisfaction are unreliable, and why our lives really are a lot worse than we think they are.
I don't think I have any questions on that one either. These are basic antinatalism talking points, so I don't feel like I really need to explore these ones. But
One of the most common responses to the antinatalist argument is to claim that antinatalists suffer from mental or physical illnesses which cloud their judgment and lead them erroneously to believe that no lives are worth starting. The antinatalist is suffering from a pessimism bias, and if they viewed the world from a realistic point of view, as most people do, they would no longer support the antinatalist view. There's a temptation amongst many to believe that most people are realists. Most people evaluate, predict and deduce things more or less accurately, whilst a small percentage of people are pessimists who hate the world, and a small percentage of people are optimistic dreamers with their head in the clouds. This seems to be a combination of two logical fallacies. Firstly, argumentum ad populum. If most people believe that life is generally a good thing, then it probably is. Secondly, it's an argumentum ad temperentium, or a golden mean fallacy. Some people think that life is terrible, others think that life is wonderful. Therefore, life is probably somewhere in the middle, with both good and bad aspects. Given that these are logical fallacies, we would need another way of measuring how good our lives are. This seems like a fairly straightforward task. Create a survey with the question, how good is your life, out of 10? If the majority of people answer 6 or above, then statistically life is generally a good thing, and the antinatalists have no case. Not only does this point of view fail to address the asymmetry argument and the no right to impose risk argument, asking people how they feel about their lives is not a reliable measurement of finding out how good people's lives are. The first reason is that the assessment is incomplete. Asking a person whether their decision to get intoxicated on alcohol was a good one or not will result in a vastly different answer depending on when the question is asked. Ask this person at the height of their intoxication and you'll receive a positive answer. Ask them during their debilitating hangover and you'll get a decidedly negative one. When asking people to assess whether their lives are worth living, we get only assessments of the living, never the assessments of the dead. Assessments of the dying may yield positive answers, but the assessments of the dying are still saturated with all kinds of corrupting psychological mush. This leads me to the second point. Our psychology makes us extremely bad at evaluating well-being and happiness objectively. In her book The Optimism Bias, award-winning cognitive neuroscientist Tali Sharot shows that approximately 80% of us suffer from an optimism bias. People with this bias are known to have unreliable memories, exaggerating positive aspects while conveniently downplaying or outright forgetting negative aspects.
I don't know if that's suffering.
And have their predictions about the future distorted by hopes and wishful thinking rather than relying on statistics or reason. People with an optimism bias consider themselves to be more interesting, more attractive, to have a better sense of humour and to be better drivers than the average person. It's simply a statistical impossibility for most people to be better than the average person. Interestingly, Sharot found that people who suffer from mild depression see the world realistically and not with a pessimism bias, contrary to what the appeal to the golden mean argument suggests. Whether having an optimism bias is actually destructive or not is a separate question. I will concede that there are some good aspects of being optimistic, less anxiety in some cases.
Edward, neutral container theory is actually very relevant as a talking point to what he's talking about here. Value evaluations, I mean. Okay, cool. Neutral container theory. Look more into that.
Of self-fulfilling prophecies can yield positive results. However, the negative aspects can be extremely destructive. Stockholm Syndrome and the belief of one's resilience against becoming addicted to destructive narcotics being just two. The question tackled in this video, though, is about how good our lives are. And there's enough evidence in psychology to suggest that personal assessments of well-being just won't do the trick. Traditionally, there are three ways of measuring how good lives are: hedonism theory, desire theory, and objective list theory. Hedonism deals with raw emotional states. While some factors such as timing and distribution need to be considered, it can be summarized as a battle between positive, negative, and neutral states. If we laugh more than we cry, that's a positive. If we cry more than we laugh, that's a negative. There are also comparative positives, the reduction of negative states. For this video, I won't take these into consideration, as even the most insane natalist couldn't possibly argue that having a child and intentionally making it suffer just so that it can recover would constitute a positive. If you subscribe to the hedonism theory of happiness, then most people's lives go in the category of bad. Even healthy lives consist of hunger, thirst, being too hot or too cold, stress and tiredness on a daily basis. In addition to these, we have the occasional bouts of illness, headaches, nausea, sadness, guilt, loneliness, and many of us will eventually face the torture of cancer, bereavement and depression. Most people indeed write off the daily inconveniences as being irrelevant, particularly those suffering from an optimism bias. But if we are to evaluate lives using hedonism, we are to take into consideration all positive and negative aspects, whether we deem them relevant or not. In his book Better Never to Have Been, David Benatar argues that positive states do exist, but against a backdrop of suffering, and not against a backdrop of neutrality, as an optimist might believe. The second theory regarding happiness is desire theory. Desire theory states that a life goes well for a person when what they want to be the case is the case, and life goes badly when what they want to be the case is not the case. If I want to have friends and I have friends, that constitutes a good. If I want to have friends and I don't have friends, that constitutes a bad.
I just want to go over this slide. So, desire fulfillment argues that the best life is one that fulfills an individual's greatest desires. Success theory, only the satisfaction of your desires about yourself count, can converge with preference hedonism. If the desire is to achieve certain subjective mental states, I want to be in love. In other cases, desires can be about objective states of the world. I want a spouse to be faithful. Even if one never knows the truth, it is bad for them and results in a worse life. All right.
There are three reasons why desire theory shows our lives to be bad overall. Firstly, many desires go unfulfilled. 80% of people wish they looked better, more than 50% are dissatisfied in their jobs, and almost all people would like not to worry about their finances. Secondly, when desires are fulfilled, it's often temporary. Marriage ending in divorce, successful business ventures ending in bankruptcy, and sporting achievement eventually leading to failure. Thirdly, and most importantly, is the notion of the treadmill of desires. The satisfaction of fulfilling a desire is often short-lived and quickly replaced by another desire. Satisfying hunger and thirst is always temporary. The rich want to become richer, and being entertained is eventually replaced by being bored again. This problem was addressed by both Schopenhauer and the Buddha. Schopenhauer claimed that happiness did not exist independently, and was merely the temporary reduction of suffering, while the Buddha suggested that desire was the principal cause of suffering. Again, our inherent optimism may dismiss the importance of not satisfying desires, but according to the desire theory, it's difficult to see how most people's lives are operating at a net benefit. The third and final theory of happiness is the objective list theory.
Yeah, I think Weinberg agreed with this theory. Objective list account. Certain things are good and bad for people. We prefer X good because it is valuable, whereas in DFD and PHT, X is valuable because we prefer it. Good, moral goodness, rational activity, awareness of true beauty, knowledge. Bad, betrayal, manipulation, slander, deceit, deprivation of freedom, enjoying sadistic pleasure, preference hedonism. I don't want to feel deceived. Desire fulfillment. I don't want to be deceived. Objective lists. I don't want to be deceived because it is bad for me. All right.
This theory states that there's a list of things which objectively make lives good or bad, whether we desire them or not. Included in the list are education, freedom from disease and suffering, social relationships and material comforts. This theory has benefits in understanding how good a life is in comparison with other people's lives, but it fails at answering objectively how good our lives are. When we think of the Middle Ages, the barbarism, disease, suffering and lack of sanitation, we consider those lives to be bad. What's to stop us then from comparing our current situation to a more ideal one and concluding that our lives are bad, given that we don't have immediate satisfaction of hunger and thirst, we face torturous disease, and we age, losing our beauty, clarity of thought and mobility? A truly independent and objective measure of a life worth living would have to transgress our current situation. Under this theory, it's difficult to argue that our lives are independently good. In conclusion, I accept that many will write this point of view off as being overly pessimistic or negative, without enough focus on the positive aspects of lives. I put that down to an optimism bias where you may not. What's evident, though, is that human history has been laden with suffering, and aside from wishful thinking and hope, there isn't much evidence to suggest that things are going to get better in the future. Despite our intuitive feeling that our lives are all right, and our wishful thinking that things will get better, a rational assessment of our situation shows the opposite to be true. Is there a need to bring more children into the world that extends beyond one's desire to have children? What good are we achieving by having more children? Do we not have an ethical obligation to delve deeper than our own ego gratification and psychologically corrupted optimistic view of what it means to be alive? In the next video, I'll talk about the step to ethilism and how the problem of suffering extends beyond human life to all sentient life.
I do not have any questions for that section. All right, let's get to the ethilism section. That's a nice song.
Throughout this series, the focus has been on antinatalism, the idea that it's unethical for humans to reproduce, that humans get a rough deal and are better off not being brought into existence. There are different ways of approaching antinatalism. Some antinatalists believe that overpopulation is a problem, and we should therefore try to limit the amount we reproduce in order to reduce the population. The Chinese one-child policy is an example of this kind of antinatalism. This type of antinatalism is sometimes referred to as Malthusian antinatalism, named after the English scholar Thomas Malthus. Malthusian antinatalists argue that it's unethical to have children under certain conditions, but that there are possible conditions under which it may be ethical to have children. Another popular antinatalist group is the voluntary human extinction movement. Vempt believes that humans are responsible for environmental degradation and that the eradication of man-made suffering would solve the problem of resource depletion and allow the animals to thrive. The final antinatalist idea is ethilism. It's life spelled
Look at the picture. Oh.
backwards. Whilst many ethilists agree that population control and human extinction have merit, it only deals with part of the problem. The tenets of ethilism are that life itself is a backward and broken system, at least sentient life. While humans are
Interesting quote. Nature herself is a mass murderer, making casual cruel experiments and condemning 10,000 to die so that one more fit will live and thrive.
life. While humans are responsible for their fair share of suffering, it's merely a drop in the ocean of suffering that occurs on this planet. While nature documentaries and popular science paints a picture of food chains, niches, and a controlled ecosystem, supervised by Mother Nature, the reality is that sentient organisms are involved in a chaotic and brutal
I can't remember who made that.
battle for survival. And this is not a problem that goes away simply by
That logo, yeah. It's kind of funny.
ignoring it, by going vegan, or even by bringing about the extinction.
Oh, wait. Yeah, this. Compared to all the other pictures, it just sets the tone. Right.
Supervised by Mother Nature, the reality is that sentient organisms are involved in a chaotic and brutal battle for survival. And this is not a problem that goes away simply by ignoring it, by going vegan, or even by bringing about the extinction of humans. Ethilism states that a universe without sentient life is preferable to a universe with sentient life.
Benatar said that, didn't he?
If there were a red
As well.
button that one could press to end all life instantly, ethilism argues that one would be ethically obliged to press it.
Okay, I'm going to ask about that. So, does ethilism entail that you would push the red button? What if you wouldn't? Can you still be an ethilist?
Another thought experiment has been proposed as a way of softening the inevitable outrageous reaction, a red button that would sterilize all living organisms on the planet. While this also carries with it its own fair share of problems, for many it's a much more psychologically comforting thought experiment. Naturally, the reception to ethilism is often...
Wait. Okay. So, well, now I don't know how to reframe my question. Uh, does Ephilism entail that you would push the red button and or sterilization button? Edward, the button experiment leading to some bad apples in the community. I've seen bad apples everywhere. I don't know. Honestly, what? I'm not. Yeah. Anyway.
One of fear, horror, and even anger.
I mean, just in the antinatalism groups, like, I don't know, people are saying these bad apples in the antinatalism group are not working in the true form of antinatalism. But as Glynos mentioned, some people could be Malthusian antinatalists. I've seen that. So, yeah.
While this also carries with it its own facial.
All right, so he mentioned 2 buttons. So do you have to be a button pusher? Does Ephilism entail that you would push the red button and or sterilization button? What if you wouldn't? Can you still be an Ephilist? I'm going to ask that.
Share of problems. For many, it's a much more psychologically comforting thought experiment. Naturally, the reception to Ephilism is often one of fear, horror, and even anger.
So, like, the community is largely anthropocentric. So if that's the case, and I don't agree with the majority of the community, and I'm sentiocentric insofar as that moral agents shouldn't be the cause of the creation of moral patience of any species, but I wouldn't push the button, what does that make me? What schism, what school do I fall into?
Many mistakenly believe that Ethelists advocate for going around killing people and animals left, right, and centre. Its detractors often claim that it's a death cult followed by radical extremists. Comparisons to Nazis or ISIS are never far away. The truth is that Ethelists are people concerned with the problem of evil and suffering in the world. They're often vegans and people with lifestyles that aim to minimise their ethical footprint. They recognise the reality of our situation, that sentient life is caught up in a biological game that it cannot win. Animals are vessels for their DNA. The goal is to survive long enough to reproduce, no matter the cost, no matter the pain, no matter the suffering. The prize? Creating more players to play the game before dying, almost always painfully, pushing a heavy rock up a hill for the sole purpose of passing the same burden on to another before meeting a grisly death. The DNA molecule ensures that its vessels stay motivated through several psychological programs, so that we can write poems and aphorisms rejoicing in our rock-pushing burden, shame those who see the activity as ridiculous, and even to invent a magic endgame where one is finally free of their rock-pushing duties and lives in paradise for eternity. A love of nature and life can be explained psychologically, but can never be defended rationally. Some statistics may help to paint a more accurate picture of the reality we live in. Humans are responsible for some 50 to 100 million animals being in research laboratories and about 24 billion animals in livestock, not including fish. The suffering these animals endure is well known, and Vempt claims that human extinction would solve these problems. However, what about animals in the wild? The number of animals in the wild is so numerous that to calculate it would be almost impossible. One estimation by mathematician and computer scientist Brian Tomasic estimates the number to be 20 quintillion or 20 billion individual animals. To put that into
Edward, I take it with such an important decision, such as pressing the button, you would have to agree with anthropocentrism to say yes to that. What do you mean? Anthropocentrism in terms of pushing the red button for only humans, or what? Could you expand on that a little bit more?
perspective, that's 3 times the approximate number of grains of sand on the whole Earth. This includes some 70 billion wild mammals living emotionally rich lives as sensitive to cold, hunger and pain as ourselves. Many people claim it's cruel to keep animals in zoos and circuses, citing their mistreatment and suffering, but then ignore the suffering that occurs in the wild. Suffering is suffering, whether it's man-made or not. An elephant being whipped by a human doesn't dislike the activity more than being eaten alive by a crocodile on the basis that it's unnatural.
Edward, well, for a naturalist, it would be making the call for all species, not just humans. Yeah. But, why is it... Oh, is it like the moral duty is anthropocentric? Is that what you're trying to say? I'm just trying to understand why you mentioned anthropocentrism in there.
The value is in the suffering, and our concern should be with the suffering too, regardless of whether it's part of nature or not. Ethicists believe that all suffering is valuable, and we should seek resolutions to this problem. The fact that many can rid themselves of the idiocy of religion only to replace it with another idiotic notion of nature knows best is testament to the resilience of our programming. Our disposition for blind spotting inconvenient and painful truths is a fascinating sign that we carry with us nuanced and somewhat sophisticated psychological software, but it's a tragic failure of our capacity to do philosophy well. What kind of mental gymnastics would it take to be confronted with the indisputable fact that unimaginable numbers of feeling organisms are brutally tortured and destroyed in the most horrific manner one can imagine, and then to respond with, "That's nature though," or even worse, to conclude that this suffering is meaningless as it's a them and not a me, despite the biological evidence showing their suffering to be indistinguishable from our own in any meaningful sense? In the time it takes you to watch this video, thousands upon thousands of living, breathing, sensitive organisms are eaten alive, bleeding, panicking, whimpering, terrified, writhing in excruciating pain. Others are dying slowly of thirst, hunger and cold, and are being eaten alive slowly from the inside by savage parasites. The pleasures that organisms feel are, at best, mild compensation for the brutal pain and suffering they will endure, and not a justification for the game they're involved in. Can it really be rationally defended that this is a fair trade-off? If we are to take the problem of suffering seriously...
Edward, so an ethicist has to agree with anthropocentrism, is what I'm saying. But they take into account other species. Why would that be anthropocentric? But there's a lot of debates there to be had. It's certainly not that straightforward. I'm not too sure why you're bringing up anthropocentrism, because ethicists talk about sentiocentrism. I don't see the connection.
Can it rationally be argued that on the balance of things, sentient lives being brought into existence are profiting?
I mean, he's literally like talking about other sentient creatures here, so... Maybe I'm... Yeah, anthropocentrism is the belief that human beings are the most important entity in the universe. The whole video is about other creatures.
Pressing the red button may run contrary to our programming and cultural cultivation, but can it really be unethical? Our time...
What about a green button? Just take away all suffering. Is it because, like, that's not practical? But the thing is, we don't have a red button. So if both buttons don't exist, why is one more probable than the other? Forever films. Oh yeah, I should probably ask that. Let me mark that down. Why not other buttons? What about localizing the same moral principles? Would it be okay to euthanize groups or single? Single persons, I guess. No, single individual animals. I'll just put that out. Wouldn't, yeah. All right. Antinatalist Cougar. I think Edward is saying that to decide on non-human animals' behalf is anthropocentric. Hello, Susan. Non-human animals' behalf is anthropocentric. Hmm. Okay. I'm not too. I don't. I don't understand that still. Sorry. Because anthropocentrism is. Oh, like it's human centric to. Well, it's kind of like a messianic kind of position that we are making the decision for all life, right? I guess you can extend that to say that our value system, that we're coming from it from a human centric point of view. I guess, Edward. The thing is, to make the call for all species determines higher value in superiority, perhaps. Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah. Okay, I get where you're coming from now. And like the red button experiment, I mean, absolutely, Cougar. Thank you. Okay. For Oval Films, you are deciding for them no matter what decision you make. Our decision, no matter what, it affects them. I'm merely trying to explain Edward's position. Yeah, I think I understand Edward's position. Well, I had it in my brain for a second there. Yeah, so we're using. Hold on, let me try this. The thing is to make the call for all species, right? So when we make the call, we're using our values, our what's it called? Our moral decisions as a superior, as a, I don't know what to call it. Our moral decision is human centric, and we're imposing that, or we're using that to make the call for all sentient life. I've never seen anthropocentrism used in that fashion before. But we're saying that we're separate. But the thing is, you don't have to be. Like, you can say that there's a separation between moral agents and moral patients, right? Like, if it was the case, and it very well might be the case where other sentient creatures are moral agents, they show moral agency, then they can make moral judgments too. But we have have to think about that a little bit. It excludes non-human intelligence. Let me just play this back a little bit.
This is a fair trade-off. If we are to take the problem of suffering seriously, can it rationally be argued that on the balance of things, sentient lives being brought into existence are profiting? Pressing the red button may run contrary to our programming and cultural cultivation, but can it really be unethical? Our time in existence is limited. The day will come when sentient life ceases to exist, leaving no trace that we were ever here. We cannot save ourselves from death, but we can choose how much pain and anguish we will allow to continue. Pressing the red button immediately brings to an end the unfathomable torture that's occurring this very second, and saves an even more unfathomable amount of potential future torture. The alleged downside is that future generations will not come to be. But for whom is this a problem? Non-existent beings cannot be deprived of anything, but they can be spared the potential suffering that their coming into existence guarantees.
Wait a minute. Okay, I don't want to see that picture again, but I want to play. I want to play what he said. Let's see here.
Leaving no trace that we were ever here. We cannot save ourselves from death, but we can choose how much pain and anguish we will allow to continue. Pressing the red.
We can choose how much pain and anguish we can allow to continue, but we can't. There literally is no red button. That doesn't exist. So this is not a possibility, and if it's not a possibility, we don't have that power. And if we don't have that power, we don't have that choice. I don't understand why. Well, let me go back a little bit.
For the game they're involved in. Can it really be rationally defended that this is a fair trade-off? If we are to take the problem of suffering seriously, can it rationally be argued that on the balance of things, sentient lives being brought into existence are profiting?
I would say no. We shouldn't create new life, and that the life that gets created into nature is a harm to them. I'd say that much, but let's go further.
Pressing the red button may run contrary to our programming and cultural cultivation, but can it really be unethical? Our time in existence is limited. The day will come when sentient life ceases to exist, leaving no trace that we were ever here. We cannot save ourselves from death, but we can choose how much pain and anguish we will allow to continue. Pressing the red button immediately brings to an end the unfathomable torture that's occurring this very second, and saves an even more unfathomable amount of potential future torture. The alleged downside is that future generations will not come to be.
Yeah, but the downside is that you kill everything. So here's the problem I have with the moral principle that is being argued for, the moral principles about total annihilation, is that if you say that you would be justified in total annihilation because there's pain and suffering, and that the day will come that global death will happen, but that we ought to accelerate that, my issue is that why doesn't that work in the localized case? So if a person's suffering today and you could accelerate that, then it justifies, in my opinion, ceasing to exist sooner. So if it doesn't work on the individual case, why would it work in the global case? What's the bridge there between localization and the globalization of this moral principle? I'd like to figure that out. Where is it? Amanda, it doesn't mean we have the power now, but there is no reason to believe it's not a power we could create. Yeah, but why can't we create other powers? It's just if there's multiple buttons, why choose that button? Like, first of all, for me to make a choice, maybe there's multiple buttons. I just don't understand, like, in the absence of that choice, that I ought to make the choice. You know what I mean? Antinatalism Cougar, my position is that study of non-human intelligence is ongoing. We just learned bees are capable of abstraction, so why not other non-human animals? Yeah, no, I agree that non-human animals are intelligent. Deathrock Cynical, man, I miss Glynos. Yeah. Edward, that would be the pro-mortalist argument, yes. Yeah, Edward, like ceasing to exist earlier is better, which is a form of pro-mortalism on the individual case. So in the global case, yeah, I could see that. For Wolf Films, I don't think you have an Ice Cube's chance in hell to create an all bad is now gone button. Why not? So other than going on the intuition, like, it's just like, where's the probability of a red button with total annihilation with no pain versus a button that creates no pain? To me, they seem equally plausible. And there's no evidence for either case. There's buttons that can create more suffering. There's buttons that can make a mess of things and probably create more suffering. That's the way that I can foresee that. What are those little creatures that are like, they can survive like in space? Like if you blow up the Earth and those little creatures go into space, they'd survive. Do any of you know what those are? Oh, shoot. They actually look kind of cute. I don't know what they're... trilobites? Is that it? I don't know. Okay, let me just go through this again.
But for whom is this a problem? Non-existent beings cannot be deprived of anything, but they can be spared the potential suffering that their coming into existence guarantees.
Mm-hmm. What happened?
For the moment, the red button is only an exercise in the hypothetical world. In the next video, I'll look at various ways in which the endgame can be brought about gracefully and ethically, and how humans are already unintentionally, precariously...
Water bear. Is that what they're actually called? It's so cute. But there's a scientific name, isn't there? Water bear. I'm going to Google that. Oh yeah, tardigrade. They're so freaking cute. These things are so freaking cute. Aww. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if other people think they're gross, but like, I don't know. I just think they're adorable. Whatever. I don't even know what they do. I don't know what they're for. But whatever. Tardigrade, yeah.
Flirting with human extinction.
Oh, that's another good song. I wish I wrote down the songs. Some of these songs are really good. But again, the red button does not have to be the practice method.
One of the most difficult things for many to accept in the ethicist philosophy is that its proponents are in favour of bringing about the end of all life. The immediate...
Bringing about the end of all life. Okay. I think they're cute as hell. Yeah, they are. They look like someone crossed a mattress with robotic bear. Antinatalist cougar. My point is, knowing non-human animals are capable of abstraction is incredibly significant. It's an indictment of the consensus that they have no moral agency. Ah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So would you say that all non-human and non-human? Hold on, let me say that again. Would you think that all non-human sentient animals have moral agency, or is it like just we're finding out more and more information that animals that we didn't think had moral agency actually may have them? Edward, maybe one day we'll get an experience machine. I'm all for the experience machine. Probably won't happen in our lifetime, though. Are you sure? I don't know. We got VR and we got, I don't know. I feel like maybe there's going to be a boom in technology. We don't know. Okay.
reaction is to equate ending life with something ethically abhorrent, some kind of uber-genocide or cult.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about ending lives, yeah. I mean, people are going to have that reaction, sure.
One of the most difficult things for many to accept in the ethicist philosophy is that its proponents are in favour of bringing about the end of all life. The immediate reaction is to equate ending life with something ethically abhorrent, some kind of uber-genocide or cultish mass murder. Unfortunately,
well, it is mass killing. It's if you literally end all lives, that's like that's literally, I don't know what to say. It's a tautology.
In favour of bringing about the end of all life. The immediate reaction is to equate ending life with something ethically abhorrent, some kind of uber-genocide or cultish mass murder. Unfortunately, the distinction between killing off life, that is, cutting lives short, and facilitating the dying out of life, that is, not creating new lives, is hardly ever understood. Too often, no matter what arguments are put forward, the response is simply, if your goal is to end life, then your plan is an evil one. The other thing which is ignored, however, is that all life will come to an end eventually. Like it or not, your subjective experience will end upon your death. Our species will, as a fact, go extinct, and all life will inevitably come to an end. So what are the ethical concerns of extinction?
So right off the bat, for me, it's the localization problem, I'd call it. So the argument is, one, life is bad. Two, death will eventually come about anyway. Three, so we should end it sooner rather than later by gradual death. So those moral principles can apply to the localized case. So my question would be, what's the I don't know what to call it. What's the bridge? I don't think that's a good word, but what's the bridge between localizing the moral principles and globalizing it? All right. It's true. People forget nothing can be saved, only prolonged. Mm-hmm.
There are three main concerns. Firstly, that it's bad to cut lives short by killing. Secondly, whether extinction is brought about naturally or otherwise, it may be bad for those who directly precede the extinction. And thirdly, some argue that the state of extinction is a negative one in its own right, due to the lack of conscious beings capable of positive feelings. The third point seems to be the most widespread belief, although it's also the...
Hold on. Cutting lives short by killing may be bad. Yeah, that seems okay. I mean, that seems right. Extinction may be bad for those who directly precede it. Okay. Extinction is bad because there would be no positive feelings. Yeah, I'm not actually like on the third one there. But yeah, I guess that's popular.
...precede the extinction. And thirdly, some argue that the state of extinction is a negative one in its own right, due to the lack of conscious beings capable of positive feelings. The third point seems to be the most widespread belief, although it's also the dumbest. As mentioned in a previous video, the point of ethilism is to understand the situation or game that we're in. Understanding that there's nothing to be won. Life, at least for humans, is a combination of psychological mechanisms, keeping us motivated enough to believe that we're achieving something important on the one hand, and very real suffering on the other hand. Whilst it may feel good to chase carrots, aggrandize our purpose in life, or cheer on our favourite sports teams, it's simply a fool's errand to show that this is something that actually has positive value. That is to say, if you hadn't...
Would the alleviation of suffering be of positive value? I'm going to ask that. Would the alleviation of pain be of positive value? Because if life is always like striving under this worldview, like a Buddhist or Schopenhauerian kind of worldview, does it follow that those temporary states of alleviation of suffering, like, are those positives, even though it's a net negative in someone's life? Like, can we acknowledge that like some positives exist anyway? Because it sounds like that's being dismissed here. Let me just rewind that.
And very real suffering on the other hand. Whilst it may feel good to chase carrots, aggrandise our purpose in life, or cheer on our favourite sports teams, it's simply a fool's errand to show that this is something that actually has positive value. That is to say, if you hadn't been brought into existence, the world would be a worse place for your not being able to watch Breaking Bad. That actually has positive value. That is to say, if you hadn't been brought into existence, the world would be a worse place for your not.
The horror of not being able to watch Breaking Bad. For Wolf Films, the alleviation of pain has a positive value only up to a point. There's no sense in striving to fix forever. I don't understand the last part. Striving to fix forever. Like striving to fix our individual lives or something else. I'm not too sure about the end there. There's no sense in striving to fix forever. Maybe my brain is fried right now. Edward, the removal of suffering would be the subtraction of the negative, only from the anti-frustrationist's perspective. Okay.
It's simply a fool's errand to show that this is something that actually has positive value. That is to say, if you hadn't been brought into existence, the world would be a worse place for your not being able to watch Breaking Bad. On the other hand, the pain and suffering that you'll not only endure, but more importantly, unavoidably impose on the world is of real value. The sickness, heartbreak, grief and death you will endure, as well as the adverse effects of the biosphere you eat, means that your existence will leave behind a foul stench. Simply put, nothing bad happens by not coming into existence, yet the bad is guaranteed by your coming into existence. Ergo, it's better not to come into existence. This applies not only to an individual, but also to a species and to all life in general. If we understand and accept that we're in a no-win game, we can then look at ways of stopping the game. This does not entail going around ending lives randomly in a fit of madness. We can ask the questions about ethical and rational ways of bringing about a clean and graceful exit. Not only can we do this, but there's also an ethical duty to do this. As humans, we are the only species able to bring about the extinction of life in a clean way. If humans were to die out, we would be left with the prospect of gladiator war among the animals until they're killed off naturally.
So because we can, we ought to do it. I don't even know if we can, but okay.
Can we do this? But there's also an ethical duty to do this. As humans...
So this is hedonic negative utilitarianism, arguing for positive duties. Okay. Interesting. And it's appealing to the fact that we can. We're the only one that could come up with something, I guess.
We are the only species able to bring about the extinction of life in a clean way.
But can we? Like, what if it's an impossibility, right?
If humans were to die out, we would be left with the prospect of gladiator war among the animals until they're killed off naturally. A prospect worthy of huge concern and one which we have an ethical duty to avoid. But two things are clear. Firstly, all life is going to die out eventually. Secondly, the longer the game continues, the more harm there'll be. So what would an ethical extinction plan look like? Regardless of how this is done, there will be some mess. The goal is to minimize the mess as much as possible. The first thing would be to reduce the population of sentient beings. As unlikely as it is, if ethilism ever became widely accepted by humans, it wouldn't take long to reduce the human population. The ethical issues here would be that there would still be a need to create new humans for a few more generations to...
Wait a minute. So it's in favor of procreating?
beings.
Edward, we certainly will never be able to sterilize all animals, or even with a darker tone kill all animals. That would be absurd. Yes, Mark, you're right. It wouldn't work. Yeah.
As unlikely as it is, if ethalism ever became widely accepted by humans, it wouldn't take long to reduce the human population.
So Glenos is already starting off with it's unlikely. But this is a hypothetical method.
The ethical issues here would be that there would still be a need to create new humans for a few more generations to execute the extinction plan.
Huh. So they're in favor of procreation. Interesting. What would my question be like? Are you in favor of procreation to bring about an extinction plan? This is it's kind of baffling because so does that mean that you'd have to continue the human species until we have a plan? Is that it? Does that mean we have to continue the human species until we have a plan? That's interesting because that's an argument for the continuation of humans and an argument in favor of procreation. So it's like it's a conditional procreation. Where are we? Final Fantasy 8911 debater, Antinatalism. Instead of making up slanders and lies about ephilism, actually attack what ephilism is. But you can't do that. Ephilism isn't a cult. Fact. What are you referring to? Antinatalism hasn't said anything like that in the chat. Projection. No, we are not in favor of it. But it's something we don't necessarily have a good answer for that either. It's a dilemma. Okay, so you would not procreate. Wait, you're in favor of it. Okay, so it's a dilemma. All right. Are you in?
The goal is to minimize the mess.
Edward, I suppose that's a form of consequentialism. Yeah, I'm pretty sure ethalists are consequentialists, negative utilitarians, using future humans as a means for a proper extinction. I'm literally going to copy that to ask. Thank you, Edward.
As much as possible. The first thing would be to reduce the population of sentient beings. As unlikely as it is, if ephilism ever became widely accepted by humans, it wouldn't take long to reduce the human population. The ethical issues here would be that there would still be a need to create new humans for a few more generations to execute the extinction plan, and that these humans would be born and raised to fulfill a specific purpose. We would also need
Yeah, so do the ends justify the means? Or using future humans as means for proper extinction, yeah.
To reduce the animal population. We can drastically reduce the number of livestock animals simply by not eating them. If there's no demand to consume animals, then they will simply not be bred. If we were to stop animal farming completely, there would be an issue of what to do with 60 billion animals. Some might argue in favour of phasing out animal slaughter, and instead of stopping animal slaughter, we could simply stop animal breeding.
Final Fantasy 8911 debater. She's made videos slandering it, and we have a mini debate under No Brains in Head's comments thread. She ended up running away in fear. She can't stand up for herself to defend her lies. Okay, well, keep it in the comment section on that video, please. Thank you.
Others who think it's too inhumane to slaughter animals may be in favour of developing and using widespread contraception, possibly introducing it into the water supply of animals. The contraception in the water method is another possibility for reducing the populations of wild animals, but it's undoubtedly a mammoth task in terms of practicality to attempt to reduce the number of animals in the wild, even if we do have some methods of ethical anti-reproduction. It may be a case where we have to accept that these animals will not be allowed to die out and will have to be killed off. This is an ethical concern and something of a mess, but it should be remembered that extinction is inevitable, whether it's controlled and deliberate or brought about naturally. If the tenets of ethilism are true, it's better that extinction take place sooner rather than later, and the ethical cost of killing off a species may be worth it if the result.
So this would have to be a global effort where we're like, okay, this is for sure happening, right? Like a small group of people couldn't do this. Or maybe they could, I don't know. All right. I don't know what question to ask.
It should be remembered that extinction is inevitable, whether it's controlled and deliberate or brought about naturally. If the tenets of ethilism are true, it's better that extinction take place sooner rather than later, and the ethical cost of killing off a species may be worth it if the result is that no new lives are brought into existence.
Some criticisms I've heard from of ethilism, I'm going to write this down. Some criticisms about ethilism is that it talks about killing. But I've also heard people say it's not about killing. In Glynos's video, he does mention it in a potential exit. No, a potential extinction plan. What are your comments on that? All right. Farvel Films write, it would have to be a global human project. Final Fantasy 8911 debater, either intelligence is going to end all life or unintelligence. Blind physics of nature. I'd rather intelligence takes responsibility to ensure the ultimate extinction is as clean as possible. It almost reminds me of, I don't know, I saw a sci-fi thing like that.
To summarize, where possible, extinction should be brought about by dying out, but where
So where possible, extinction should be brought about by dying out. So a global sterilization would be the preference? Is that right?
true, it's better that extinction take place sooner rather than later, and the ethical cost of killing off a species may be worth it if the result is that no new lives are brought into existence. To summarize, where possible, extinction should be brought about by dying out, but where dying out is not possible, species will have to be killed off. What would this killing off look like? For obvious reasons, the world would have to be left totally uninhabitable. The risk of allowing sentient beings to roam the earth, killing each other without anyone to press the off button, is one that can't be ignored. With current technology, we're nowhere near having the capability to blow up the earth. Some revolutionary discoveries, it seems.
By clean, I mean painless. As little pain as possible. Mass extinction isn't going to be clean either way. I suppose that is a question to be asked also. What makes a definition of a concept objective and the proper definition? Some say ethilism advocates for bad things, others say no. Who defines an idea? That's a good question, yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna ask that.
Would need to be made before that becomes a viable option. Another possibility suggested has been to slow down the Earth's rotation so that it plummets into the Sun. This
Excuse me?
before that becomes a viable option. Another possibility suggested has been to slow down the Earth's rotation so that it plummets into the Sun.
Okay, let me continue this.
This also seems like an idea in the realms of fantasy, as we appear to have nowhere near the technology capable of achieving such a feat. Whilst blowing up the
where am I? Final. Reality confirms what's objective. Night Shadow. Hey, Night Shadow. Apholism only tries to justify hatred honestly. It is what it is. There's plenty of evidence of it. I don't know. They're arguing for extinction methods right now.
Another possibility suggested has been to slow down the Earth's rotation so that it plummets into the Sun. This also seems like an idea in the realms of fantasy, as we appear to have nowhere near the technology capable of achieving such a feat.
If that's like a possibility, or if that's like a potential, then I feel like I could make up other scenarios too. Anyway, Night Shadow, no, you are lying. Present evidence for apholism being based on hatred. Otherwise, there's absolutely no good reason anybody should take you seriously.
Whilst blowing up the Earth may be an impossible feat, making it uninhabitable to 99% of life forms is within our capabilities. If all our current nuclear weapons were detonated, it would put the Earth into a nuclear winter lasting some 2,000 years. This would kill off all life with the exception of microbial life and possibly some deep-sea fish. For many, even considering ways to end all life is unethical. Ironically, our current life-affirming civilization is flirting dangerously close to
Nightshade, I'm glad you asked. For all films, cool it, guys.
human extinction. Several factors, including the loss of global dimming, the firing of the Cathrate gun, and the moistening of the upper troposphere, could bring about abrupt climate change. The possibility of nuclear war or the meltdown of nuclear power facilities also looms over us as a potential cause for extinction. The effects of climate change are alarmingly ignored, overlooked, or downplayed, and the all-too-common human life script of "it'll never happen to us" may just be our undoing. Although there'll be nobody to write the history books, humans will go down in history as the biggest waste, capable of reason, compassion, and understanding, but too owned by psychological addictions and selfishness. The only happen to us, mating of the upper troposphere, could bring about abrupt climate change. The possibility of nuclear war or the meltdown of nuclear power facilities also looms over us as a potential cause for extinction. The effects of climate change are alarmingly ignored, overlooked, or downplayed, and the all-too-common human life script of "it'll never happen to us" may just be our undoing. Although there'll be nobody to write the history books, humans will go down in history as the biggest...
Yeah, Final Fantasy, get it then, Slander Apholism is rational. Hold up, I'm trying to find the PDF. You guys can, I don't know, take that somewhere else. I don't think you can post links in here anyway, and I'm trying to come up with questions to ask Aphilists. If the thing going back and forth about fighting one another or trying to use words or whatever, like, you guys can, that's not what this channel is about. This channel is about conversation and trying to inquire into other people's beliefs, even though you disagree with them. So cool it. That's what I'm trying to do. Anyway. Antinatalism Cougar, I agree, Mark. Why not fantasize about ways to end suffering without killing all life? Yeah, I mean, like, if you're going to go down the road of, like, throwing the earth into the sun, I mean, like, again, the probabilities of all these ideas, you can think of other things, you can fantasize about other things. It's just as unlikely, likely. Why would it not be? That's how I feel. Yeah, I'll ask that and see what happens.
Waste, capable of reason, compassion, and understanding, but too owned by psychological addictions and selfishness. The only hope may be that human recklessness does enough damage that it may wipe out the other sentient beings along with themselves. The upper troposphere could bring about abrupt climate change. The possibility of nuclear war or the meltdown of nuclear power facilities also looms over us as a potential cause for extinction. The effects of climate change are alarmingly ignored, overlooked, or downplayed, and the all too common human life script of "it'll never happen to us" may just be our undoing. Although there'll be nobody to write the history books, humans will go down in history as the biggest waste.
Amanda, but throwing the Earth into sun is actually a possibility in physics. Truck? Who's Truck? Oh, Trick. Talks about it too, I'm pretty sure. David Pierce talks about engineering superhuman bliss. He thinks that's possible too. So, I don't know.
Capable of reason, compassion, and understanding, but too owned by psychological addictions and selfishness. The only hope may be that human recklessness does enough damage that it may wipe out the other sentient beings along with.
I don't know if that's a good hope. It's kind of like accelerationism. Sounds like environmental accelerationism or extinction accelerationism.
Themselves.
So that raises a question. Long termism? No. Do we have responsibilities to future generations for a better environment? Or should we accelerate climate change or other things that could extinct us? I'll link it to my recent video. Night Shadow Final Fantasy, I will look into my video if you still want to check it out. Give me a couple minutes. Alrighty, that's the road to aphilism. Or sorry, that's the road to antinatalism. I don't know why you didn't just call it the road to aphilism. That's... yeah. Anyway. Debates. Glenos Meets favorites. Adventures of an antinatalist. I want to go through Life Sucks. Let's look into Life Sucks. Antinatalism. Does he talk about aphilism in any of his videos? Why am I an antinatalist? I've seen that. I've seen the light draw. I saw the eating thing. Vegan art. Oh, he made an artwork of Gary Yourofsky? Huh. What's procreation to bring about extinction entail ethically wise? What procreation to bring about extinction entail ethically wise? Did he say that? Procreation to bring about extinction? I don't recall that. I have the same question. Why not call it the Road to Ephilism? Actually, I'm going to ask about that. Why not call it the Road to Ephilism? Wish him well in Russia from me, if you can, Mark, when you talk to him. Okay, I will. From Edward to Glynos. Wish him well in Russia from me. The objective fact that antinatalism and ephilism are two different philosophies. They are definitely not the same. Death Roxanne, kind of. Alright, it's up. Yeah, Life Sucks is dope artist. Yes, I love his art. It's really good. Jealous of his videos too. So, wow.
Diane's channel, she really uses these techniques to great effect, when she has the nerve to go out and actually talk to people about antinatalism too. I think that's really cool. And then of course there's the kind of activism I'm performing here, is art activism. Art can have a very wide influence. And you can definitely consider YouTube videos art. Gary Amendum is definitely practices the high art of the response video. This painting was donated to Sasha Farms Animal Sanctuary in Manchester, Michigan for their annual silent auction. It was a great event with great vegan food. Sorry I didn't take much video of the event. There's lots of paintings and little art projects that people sold there. Gary Yorovsky was not there, but I did send him an email of the painting and he liked it. If you ever need any motivation to be an antenatal or vegan activist or just for utilitarian ethics, I would say just think of the victims, think about the unborn, think about innocent animals being born.
Life Sucks is a quite a staunch negative utilitarian. I feel like someday him and I should debate about ethics. Have like a negative utilitarian and a Kantian debate. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Into this cruel world against their will, and let them be the reason why you advocate for antinatalism, veganism, and just proper ethics. Alright, thank you for watching.
Okay, I just wanted to check out that picture. Nihilist comments, the cost of fatherhood, antinatalism and negative utilitarianism, Inventum versus antinatalist person. This is such a sad video. Let's draw Glynos. It's real late here now, Mark. Appreciate the stream. Thank you for marking some of my questions down. But I gotta go now. Take care, Amanda. And you, Cougar. When's the debate again? It's not a debate, but it's a discussion that I'm having on May 8th. But depending on, video processing, I'm hoping to have it released May 9th or 10th. 10th at the very latest. So yeah, keep an eye out on that. Vasectomies. Are vasectomies vegan? What? Is that a question? Uh, Superhuman vegan grains. I never actually watched this, talking to college students about antinatalism. Why I am a vegan. I think he mentions me in this one. Could you watch videos talking about with students? Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm down for that. I've never actually watched this.
On December 10th, 2019, there was a philosophy roundtable on the subject of antinatalism and procreation ethics at the Lurie Biomedical Engineering Building on the University of Michigan's North Campus in Ann Arbor. It's easy to find on Google Maps because it's right across from the Gerald "Pardon Me" Ford Presidential Library. He's the only U.S. president from Michigan, and he went to school here. So if you were to write a book about Watergate, then you might come here to look through his presidential papers. I looked it up, and the Pardon of Nixon signed by Gerald Ford is actually...
Just gonna update my live stream in case anybody gets confused. Just gonna say study stream. There we go. Updated.
archived in Washington, D.C. Too bad, because it's one of the only things I would like to see, kind of like Al Capone's tax returns. It's a famous artifact in the history of American crime. Gerald Ford was an unelected crook, yet he's the kind of person that they build museums and statues in tribute to. But I digress. This roundtable was part of a continuing series of bioethical discussions put on by lecturer Barry Belmont. His mission statement reads, "The world could stand to think a little bit more about itself and where it's heading. We have a brilliant generation of engineers coming up, and they've got ideas about how they want the world to look, and they want the skills to make it look that way. We've got to equip them with these and many others, and I think I can help." So I applaud him for having these discussions, and it gave me the opportunity to educate some young people on antinatalist ethics in person. This was the first time that I had the chance to do this in the wild, so it was a new experience for me. I thought it went pretty well. These are engineering students, so they're educated and curious. I was disappointed right when I walked in that everyone was eating cheese pizza at an ethics talk, and someone even bizarrely asked me, "What's wrong with cheese?" I'm sorry I missed the animal rights roundtable that took place in 2018. That would have been a good one for me to go to, and maybe this wouldn't have happened. There were around 15-20 people in attendance. As I said, it was mostly engineering students, but not all of them were. I was glad that I wasn't the oldest one there. One man ironically brought his son to expose him to philosophy, so I do give him kudos for that, although he was unsurprisingly resistant to my arguments. The discussion lasted 2.5 hours. The moderator did get everyone's consent to be recorded before it began for his own archive, so I also recorded it and will post a few clips in this video, but we'll take out any personal information like names and such. Beaumont started the discussion by asking an interesting question. Who are you, and why were you born? You could see that everyone was trying to get inside their parents' heads and come up with a reason. Common answers were, my parents wanted to try for a boy this time, and my parents wanted my brother to have a sibling. Supposedly that's why my parents had my brother. This is what I said.
I don't know if I'm the only antinatalist activist who showed up here, but I came into existence because my parents wanted to satisfy their own selfish desires. They didn't really care to, what misfortune I was going to be involved in. They did it for themselves, not for me. I make antinatalist themed artwork, and I have an antinatalist YouTube channel called Life Sucks. And I promote antinatalism on that channel, and I come...
It's funny, I remember when I had Life Sucks and Daily Negativity on my channel, and I was looking at the names, and I'm like, oh, like we were having fun with the discussion, and I was sharing it with my friends, and I'm like, hey, you should check out the discussion, and they saw the picture of just like life sucks, daily negativity, and they're like, Mark, what are you into? And I'm like, trust me, it's a good discussion.
I'm at it from the negative utilitarian perspective. So, to me, standard utilitarianism values happiness, which to me is just a term that doesn't really mean anything when you compare it to suffering. So all my ethics are suffering focused. The only value in the universe to me is suffering. Life to me is just a replicating molecule with no purpose. And there's a horrific price that we pay for bringing life into existence. To put someone into this dangerous world on purpose, where they'll be tortured and killed, to me is essentially the same thing as committing an act of premeditated murder. And is my
That's quite the claim.
opinion that this is one of the most important subjects we could possibly discuss, so that's why I'm here today.
As you can tell from my opening statement, I was mostly going to use Ephesus arguments in addition to Benatar's. The first order of business was to suss out what antinatalism is and means. So we had to discuss if the problem is human procreation, or is the problem sentience. The moderator had a lot of quotes from Zapfa's The Last Messiah, which is a very human-centered essay. So I'm not surprised that devotees of Zapfa don't seem to be animal rights activists as much as Ephesus or Benatarians.
You should have shown them my channel. My icon is a drawing of me. Much better.
It's interesting you brought up animals. I wasn't even thinking about that because, like, if it's basically your argument is essentially I don't have consent to exist.
Yeah.
You were never asked. Neither do any other animals. So is it essentially immoral for life to exist in the first place?
Yes. Yes.
Aw, they're like laughing, and Life Sucks is like, yes, that's true. I'll be honest, I'm not too convinced by the consent argument. I'm more convinced by the axiological one, the asymmetry, but I don't know. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem I have with Zapfa's essay, The Last Messiah, is that it's so human-centric. You know, like, who cares about humans when animals have been here for 500 million years, killing each other, ripping each other's faces off? We've only been here for really, like...
Life sucks. It's just going right into it, eh?
I mean, we've only had culture for 10,000 years. Maybe I think 100,000 years humans have existed. I mean, that's nothing compared to what animals have experienced. So to me, antinatalism, and sometimes this philosophy that applies to animals is called ephilism, which is life spelled backwards. It's all about life. Life is a negative, not just human life or the ethics of creating humans. Animals don't know any better. That's the problem. Humans do. So animals don't have a choice. There is no ethics there. But if they did know, hopefully they would come to the conclusion this is wrong.
Would it be worthwhile for humanity to last long enough to sterilize all other life?
Absolutely. That's like the only reason for us to continue to exist, in my opinion.
Is to be the stewards of life's extinction.
Yeah, sometimes it's called the graceful exit.
Okay.
So we'd have to keep a few humans around so we can make sure all the animal life can go extinct, as peacefully and painlessly as possible, and then we can turn the lights out.
I don't really like that extinction got brought up so quickly because people become fixated on it. I mean, it is the end goal.
Yep. When Life Sucks and I and a bunch of other ANs were at the Claremont Philosophers Group, I remember a large part of the discussion was extinction theories, and the antinatalism ethics of procreation got kind of sidelined, which I found unfortunate because obviously they didn't agree with that. They just wanted to come up with scenarios. And it's like, well, first you have to agree that you would want that scenario, but then also argue that it's wrong to create life too.
Of antinatalism and ephilism, but I feel like we do have to kind of nudge people a little bit more slowly into accepting extinction, and it's probably best to start out with arguments against human procreation first. However, I do realize that people are going to reach the logical conclusion themselves pretty fast and bring it up anyways. Maybe it's better to get it out of the way. So then the moderator asks the question,
Why do you suppose folks who have the capability of doing that, current presidents, czars of Russia, haven't done that?
To destroy the planet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're all natalists, pretty much. This philosophy is kind of new, really. And, you know, it's something that we should really come together and, like, starting small, but come to a consensus. And it'd be great if everyone could get on board. I mean, because speaking of consent, you know, I mean, there's this thing called this thought experiment called the red button experiment, or thought experiment, and it's if you could press a red button and destroy the planet painlessly, would you do it? And of course, my answer would be yes. I'd do it without hesitation. But I would be violating everyone's consent on Earth who wants to continue to exist, including all the animals. You know, they don't know; they might want to keep living. So that is a problem. And of course, the other problem is a nuclear disaster could bring about great misfortune and pain and suffering. So we want to do it in the most ethical way possible.
I'm curious, when you mentioned consent, I did not consent to exist. I suppose neither did any of us. Yet, if you ask me now if I post-event consent,
Right.
I would say yes, I am happy to be alive. I would rather to have been alive than not to have existed at all.
Yeah, it's because life is addictive.
I'm happy. I guess I'm happy to be addicted.
Right. Says the person who doesn't have cancer.
Yes.
Right.
I'm in a privileged position to say that.
Right.
But my point is that a lot of people can say that.
Oh yeah, but the question is it ethical for you to impose life on someone else, even though they might have a terrible life?
You don't really know if they'll have a bad or a good life.
That's right.
though.
It's true.
What if, let's imagine someone had a horrible childhood, so they want to have kids to give that child a good childhood.
Right.
Is that still unethical in your opinion?
Yes, 'cause
They're
it-
thinking about doing good.
Right, because that kid could have cancer, that kid could get AIDS, that kid get run over. I mean, there's like thousands and thousands of things that could go wrong, and so few things that could go right.
What level of like certainty would you need? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of actions we do every day that we don't know what the effect will be because just can't predict into the future.
Right.
So like, how is it fair, or like not fair, but like makes sense to like say like, because you can't know what will happen, you can't do that because there might be a lot of stuff you could apply that to.
Right, but the overwhelming odds are that it's going to be a negative outcome. I mean, everyone dies, 100% guarantee, and death is usually seen as a bad thing.
Is there no concept to the antinatalist of the good death?
All right. I should probably ask a question about death. What are people's views on the badness of death?
Like, what would be an example of that?
The death one greets as an old friend, the one we're all striving towards, right? Not to meet our ends as enemies or foes, but as inevitable coming togethers, right? Like, is there a way one could die peacefully?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I hope that it happens to all of you, and hope I also have. I also have
What a
peaceful
thing to
death.
wish on this holiday season.
Then the moderator polled the room about who would want to live forever, and not shockingly, many of them think that they would like that. This is one of the points where the discussion goes out into the
I'd like it.
weeds a bit, so I'll just skip ahead.
I mean, it depends on the quality, of course.
Reasons why people think that they would want to jack off for thousands of years isn't very interesting. At least someone did bring up boredom and the fact that if you live long enough and see everyone and everything you loved be destroyed, immortality would be a curse. At this
I'm not convinced.
point, the moderator asked me a question that always seems to come up, aliens, and then it basically became an Ask the Antinatalist show, which I don't mind because this is what I was there for.
Actually, this allows me, sorry, I have to. He brings up space travel. I have to ask our resident antinatalist. If we found life on other worlds, should we snuff it out?
Well, it's never going to happen, for one thing.
Why is that? Oh, we can get into that, but
Yeah,
never gonna
we know
happen.
abiogenesis only occurred once in the whole history of the universe that we know of. So all of us,
Yeah, we don't know much, right?
well, every plant, every animal, we all descended from that same bacteria that only replicated once. So life is more rare, I think, than anyone gives it credit for. We haven't found it on any other planets in the solar system. We can't reach other solar systems. So the only way we could discover them, of course, was through their radar or their radio waves or anything. But it's impossible right now for us to reach them. So there's nothing we can do.
What if it's something as simple as bacteria on Mars? Just under the under the frost, little teeny tiny microorganisms.
Yeah. The only problem would be that's not sentient, so who cares? But could it evolve into something sentient? Then that'd be a problem, because people say that, like with the red button scenario. Okay, say we nuke the planet on all the different fault lines, cause global catastrophe, kill all sentient life. What if the back?
So this is the rhetoric that I think people have a problem with. Like, killing does get brought up. So yeah, it's going to be reasonable. People are going to like have a negative reaction when Ephelis are talking about killing. But I'm curious about that. Like, it's stated there.
So the only way we could discover them, of course, was through their radar or their radio waves or anything. But it's impossible right now for us to reach them. So there's nothing we can do.
What if it's something as simple as bacteria on Mars? Just under the under the frost, little teeny tiny microorganisms.
Yeah. The only problem would be that's not sentient, so who cares? But could it evolve into something sentient? Then that'd be a problem, because people say that, like with the red button scenario. Okay, say we nuke the planet on all the different fault lines, cause global catastrophe, kill all sentient life. What if the bacteria survives? In the next 4 billion years that the planet could be, or actually the Earth will probably, the atmosphere will probably be burned off in about 1.5 billion years, but could in that time life come back? I don't think it could, because I think abiogenesis, however it happened, was incredibly rare.
So I gave Inmendum's standard reply to this argument, that life is more rare than most people suspect, and intelligent life, as far as we know, only exists on Earth. Then it got bogged down into how far radio waves can actually go and how accurate is the Drake equation, etc.
Oh my god.
Sticking around so that we can help some species that is more advanced than us go extinct is one of the harder to swallow natalist arguments. So then a student asked me an interesting question about how does someone become an antinatalist, and why aren't there more of us?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why have you been able to attain this enlightenment, but most people don't share this?
Well, that's
belief, if this is
what Zappa was talking about. Is delusion. Like I was saying to him, life is addictive. You don't really know why you love it.
How? Let me rephrase it. How were you able to break free?
Oh.
It sounds like the Matrix. How are you able to break out of the Matrix?
I guess I've always been kind of a depressive realist. And then when I was, 12, I became an atheist, so I didn't believe in that delusion. I got that out of the way, so that helped. And then I got into something I look forward maybe to coming to the next time you're going to talk about overpopulation ethics and stuff. I think that kind of led me in antinatalism. I thought, well, this is stupid to bring someone into the world when there's too many people. And then that kind of led me to think, well, what other reasons? And then I discovered the ethics of it.
So it took...
Oh my god. The person who's coughing in the recording, it's really getting to my ear.
About a half an hour.
I'm sorry for whoever's listening who hears it too. I'm sorry about that.
Into the discussion, but the question every antinatalist gets at some point came up. It's almost guaranteed.
Why don't you kill
I
yourself?
hope you don't take this the wrong way. But given your stance, why are you still alive?
That's one of the most common things that antinatalists get.
You know what? I don't get it anymore. No one asks me that anymore. I have no idea what happened. Yeah. I used to get asked that a lot. I have no idea what changed, but people don't ask me that anymore. Oh. Night Shadow, all good.
Why don't you just kill yourself? Well, of course, death is a harm. I don't want to hurt myself. I'm scared of dying. I have a wife. I have 4 dogs. I have a mother with Parkinson's disease I have to take care of. I have responsibilities. And also, I can't participate in antinatalism or veganism. I can't get people to stop eating cheese pizza and stop having kids if I'm...
Haha. He took a jab at the group because they ate pizza. That's funny.
dead. So to me, that's a good reason to keep going. Dogs, I have a mother with Parkinson's disease I have to take care of. I have responsibilities. And also, I can't participate in antinatalism or veganism. I can't get people to stop eating cheese pizza and stop having kids if I'm dead. So So to me, that's a good reason to keep
Why
going.
can't we eat cheese pizza?
It's immoral and unethical.
So it's not just that like the current human condition is undesirable. Would you'd go so
I wonder if he went into the vegan argument there.
far as to say like there is no conscious state that is worth trying?
Yeah, life is just a tragic accident. We should get rid of it. So, like, I think.
Life or consciousness? Just to...
Oh, okay, yes. Well, life, but I know we're talking about consciousness. I think this. But consciousness can be good, and especially for the animals, because we can be the bus driver, the good bus driver, and steer this thing into a graceful exit. So that way, it's a damn good thing we have it.
To the extent that we don't do that, and to the extent that you or anyone else would hold us morally culpable of what consequences then, like what comes of the fact that we aren't currently shepherds of Armageddon.
Oh, what comes of that?
Yeah.
Just, billions
Shepherds of Armageddon. Ooh.
more years of suffering.
I just have a question. I do want to know more about the line of reasoning.
Sure.
So what makes it so that essentially living is suffering? Could you just expand on that?
It's because of unfulfilled desires. So there is no.
Or possibly consider question number 7.
Yeah.
I guess we're all going to read it. Okay.
Okay.
Benedar posits an inherent asymmetry, and perhaps this is where you're going to go with it, to the presence of pain in existence, on the whole not a great thing, and the absence of suffering in non-existence, on the whole generally a good thing. So this is this asymmetry where non-existence is necessarily full of less suffering than coming out of existence.
Yeah, I just don't believe there's any positive in life. It's only negative. So like right now I'm
In
feeling.
this conversation.
Is there like a name for that where there is no positives, there is no well-being, there is no happiness? It's all about a baseline of suffering. I feel like that position, everyone keeps saying it's like a Schopenhauer view or it's a Buddhist view, but like I feel like there should be a name for it, and
Well, we're trying to fix the problem, and the problem is greater. So like I'm thirsty right now. You may think you're getting some pleasure by drinking some water, but really you're just trying to mitigate a pain. So you're bringing something into existence. They're just basically going to have all these unfulfilled desires that you're going to just need to try and fulfill them. There isn't anything.
Can I just push back a little on that? The pain that you might associate with thirst.
Negative utilitarianism? No, that's just saying that the negatives have more moral weight, or that's all that matters morally when you're making your utilitarian calculus. That doesn't mean that happiness and well-being and whatever is like deprivations or whatever. Like, I think a negative utilitarian can accept other views. It's just that when you're doing your utilitarian calculus, then it doesn't matter, right? But this is more of like an ontological claim about the nature of what's going on. I bet you there's a name for it. I just can't think of it. But I always know like Schopenhauer gets brought up with this. I wonder if he came up with it. I don't know. Anti-frustrationism. Yeah, I guess that could be it. Let me check. Man, that one's specific though. Figgy, which states that we don't do any good by creating satisfied extra preferences. What matters about preferences is not that they are satisfied existence, but that they don't have frustrated existence. I'm not too sure that fits either. Maximizers of preference satisfaction should instead call themselves minimizers of preference frustration. I guess so. Yeah, that last bit makes sense. Yeah, I guess that last bit made sense. It's similar with negative utilitarianism, teachings of Buddhist Stoicism, philosophical pessimism, and Schopenhauer. What's Schopenhauer got to say? Let's see here. All right. Let's go back to this. CERN983, lurking. Thank you for the lurk.
In its typical sense, as we have it in a developed world, cannot in any way be what you would put in the same category as suffering, is it?
Yeah, it's suffering, especially if it's
is
minor.
that not to delude the word suffering of?
Well, take that away from me for 24 hours.
Sure, but that's not what you mean by thirst in the normal, typical sense that everyone in this room experiences.
If you go to 526 of his video, why does he define ethylism as just antinatalism applied to non-human animals? Yeah, that seems to be... Well, the majority of antinatalists don't believe antinatalism applies to sentient life. I did that a little bit of an experiment today. I messaged as many antinatalists that I know about whether or not Benatarian antinatalism applies to sentient life, and the majority said no. So I actually thought about not calling myself an antinatalist anymore. If the majority of the movement ignores sentient life and thinks that, that a moral agent intentionally creating a moral patient is okay because it belongs to another species, that species discrimination to me is irrational. And so, like, antinatalism, I mean, it's literally in David Benatar's book, but the thing is, you don't have to be a Benatarian to be an antinatalist. You could be, you can agree with, what is it, Julia Tanner? Or, you could agree with Ashil Singh. You can agree with Julio Cabrera. You could agree on different forms of antinatalism that don't include other animals. So, yeah, I don't know. This is before sentiocentric antinatalism. Well, no, this was done in 2019. For your information, my comment was removed. Wait, what? How? No, he was just top chat. Which, wait, I'm so confused. Which comment? Did you comment on this particular video? This is ethylism closer to what you are. Oh, wait. Then ethylism is closer to what you are, LOL. Well, I'm not an extinctionist, so I feel like the ethylist would not like me. But yeah, it feels like, okay, there's the philosophical antinatalism, and then there's the social movement antinatalism. And the social movement antinatalism definitely isn't what I believe in. When I read David Benatar, it does take into account other sentient creatures, and he says we shouldn't breed them. But people have said, no, Benatarian antinatalism doesn't include breeding animals. And I'm like, well, it said it right there. Like, maybe I'm really bad at reading, or my reading comprehension of his book is not that great. Let me see if I could find some quotes. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know. Like page 2 says it, and if you look at some of the footnotes, so yeah, I don't know what to do. Like I don't care about the club. I don't need the label. I don't need to be called an antinatalist, and I don't need to belong to the crew. All I care about is the ethics. So, is it ethical for a moral agent or a human to create sentient life? Period. Because like even Benatar talked about the potentiality of the harm of creating AI sentience. So like if they're not if they're not of our species, and Benatar's like, yeah, if AI was to become sentience, it would be wrong for them to be created into existence. Then obviously creating other sentient creatures by us, at the very least, by breeding them, would be wrong. It seems so obvious to me, but yeah, a large part of the community disagrees with it. So I don't know what the heck, you know. Sorry, I feel a little bit frustrated by that anti-frustrationism. This is before Santos. Wow. Antinatalism Cougar, what were you saying wow to? No, he just has top chat. I had to post it twice. Which, are you talking about in this chat or? Like, are you talking about the comment section or this chat? Is my chat program not working? Before the term was popularized, he has top chat instead of live chat. Oh, are you guys talking about... Okay, hold on. Let me see what my settings are. Filtering, maybe? I don't know. There's no option here. Well, if some of your comments are not showing up, I'm really sorry about that. I don't know how to fix that. Darn. Yeah, sorry about that. I have no idea how to fix that. No, my comment to your chat was removed. Oh. Weird. Oh, did it have a link? Like, did you post a link? Because links can't be posted here. Maybe that's why. Cougar, did you curse? That's true. Some of the curse words get blocked. That's true. Some words get your comments removed, yeah. I miss the old days where you could say what you want on YouTube. Yeah. No, it was the same comment Mark read out loud. Oh. I had to post it twice. It doesn't show up in Top Chat or Newest. Weird. Oh. Yeah, it's a YouTube glitch that has been happening a lot apparently. Oh. Someone reported it. Try live chat. Oh, that's true. Okay, I'll open up my live chat. Not in anyone's control sadly. Okay, I'll open up YouTube live chat and fiddle around while we play this.
I'm trying to say, like, I'm thirsty right now. I want to take a drink. I would never in any way associate that with suffering. Would you?
Yeah. I mean, you're only drinking because you have a desire to drink.
Sure, but I don't believe it's because I desire not to suffer.
The moderator was the one who pushed back against me a bit this time. This is the whole pinprick thing that Superhuman Dance and Inmendum have to argue about time and time again. Is a minor pinprick suffering? And my understanding is that yes, any discomfort is suffering. It's something that needs fixing. Again, I wish I could have explained this better.
But for one thing, it's not technically possible yet, and there's no reason to say why that would be better than non-existence.
Wait a minute.
It would be
Suffering. It's something that needs fixing.
take that away from me for 24 hours.
Sure, but that's not what you mean by thirst in the normal, typical sense that everyone in this room experiences. I'm trying to say, like, I'm thirsty right now. I want to take a drink. I would never in any way associate that with suffering. Would you?
Yeah. I mean, you're only drinking because you have a desire to drink.
Sure, but I don't believe it's because I desire not to suffer.
The moderator was the one who pushed back against me a bit this time. This is the whole pinprick thing that Superhuman Dance and Inmendum have to argue about time and time again. Is a minor pinprick suffering? And my understanding is that yes, any discomfort is suffering. It's something that needs fixing. Again, I wish I could have explained this better. Like when one guy said, well, I can drink water even if I'm not thirsty. Then I should have said, well, that's because you're bored, and boredom is suffering whether you accept it or not. The moderator then gets into the transhumanist argument, one that I have addressed a few times on this channel.
So there's a branch of negative utilitarianism called transhumanism. If you ever heard of david Pearce, he's kind of the big guy. He's a British philosopher.
David Hyde Pierce, actor from the 90s sitcom Frasier, yes.
Another guy, I think, but for one thing, it's not technically possible yet, and there's no reason to say why that would be better than non-existence. It would be. Yeah, I mean, it's a better future for us for sure, and for the animals. I mean, like, not against it. I just think it's as good as non-existence.
I cut out a big chunk here of the discussion because it wasn't relevant, and anytime the discussion got into movies or culture, it took away from the main point. We talked a little bit about punishment ethics, and again, that wasn't the subject.
Because like I think of life sometimes as probably one of the greatest gambles in just everything. Because you may be born into a wealthy family, never had to really care about all suffering, all that stuff, do whatever the heck you want. Or you may be born into like the shittiest situation in the world where you face constant suffering for millennia, who knows. But like in the end of the day, it's just a gamble. So why don't I just be born, take a gamble? If life sucks, I'll just opt out, and I'll spend the rest. I'm still gonna spend the rest of my life, or the rest of my non-life, just as nothing, or like maybe like in a sensory deprivation tank, essentially kind of situation. So, what's the harm if I'm comparing just 100 years of a chance of maybe some hope or something good versus, and either way, I'm going to be returning to this eternity of non-existence.
It seems like you took the asymmetry argument and you did it exactly the other way, and I disagree with it just as much this way.
Alright.
I don't know, because as I understood it, like, the antinatalist asymmetry was, like, why would you bring something into existence when there's a risk of it suffering, in short, because the pleasure which might happen is, like, it doesn't matter. But
I think my assumption is like there were.
Seems like you just turned that around. You said this suffering doesn't matter. Why not just shoot for the off chance of having a good time?
Yeah, but are we basically saying that it'd be okay to have a kid because they can just kill themselves?
I'd say it'd be okay to have a kid because we're all gonna die either way. Like, literally, we all will return to like ashes or nothing or whatever. And if there's even the whole idea of like 1%, like a 0.001% chance of like something amazing happen, even if like that, let's just say that was not even the case. Like, why not just
Yikes! That is the reverse of the asymmetry in a way. Yes. So even if there's like a 1% chance of total happiness, this is good. Am I understanding that right?
Just live for the heck of it, just like maybe.
Well, I mean, just imagine.
Or just trying to leave the Earth in a better position so that way.
I'm surprised a room of engineers has trouble understanding weighted variables. Asymmetry, yeah.
The next
I think they're just like trying to push and, yeah.
Folks that occupy it have, you know, instead of a 0.001% chance of having something great happen, maybe they have a 0.002, and then they can turn that into a 0.004.
That's one way to put it.
Actually, I mean, I know you were being glib, but is there not something to the notion that it is actually okay to condemn someone to life, to throw them into existence, Given that they do have this ripcord, the ability to get out of
Sid, people are often not as smart as they think.
it, it's unlike other prisons in that sense.
Well, the unfortunate thing, and I was going to bring this up during the prison thing, there is no right to die in this country, really. There's
at least 7 states that have it.
If you have,
only, right?
I think.
It's mostly relegated to terminally ill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I think Oregon's one of the states, but
Sorry, my bad.
you have to have inoperable brain cancer and be in like stage 4 right before you die.
It's a pretty high burden.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a right to die, I mean, the only thing that would help your argument a little bit is if you could go to a suicide booth or whatever and put in a quarter and you're nothing. But we don't have anything like that. Any way to help someone who wants out.
We have pharmacies, we have cliffs, we have tall buildings, we have cars.
We have the internet, the dark web.
But you would tell your kid, hey, there's a building, go for it. Don't you see there's a little bit of an ethical problem with that?
Well, and I think there's a bit of coercion on your part as a figure of authority saying, you can do exactly what I'm telling you to do, or there's always a building.
But why bring that pain
not
into
equal
existence?
choice.
Like, killing yourself is a very traumatic thing to do, and why, when they don't have to exist in the first place, why even take that chance?
Going towards like minimalizing like suffering.
Yeah, Lawrence brought this up in a weird way. Like if someone was to kidnap you into like a car or something, and you wake up in the middle of the ride, and then the person's like, well, you could always jump out. And I remember some people used like a roller coaster analogy too. It's like, yeah, you're stuck on a roller coaster, and yeah, you could jump out, but it's quite the... Yeah, why put someone in that situation? I don't know of a better analogy. Yeah. I don't know how to, like... Most people are like, yeah, suicide is pretty terrible, so let's not impose that on anybody.
Right, like...
Yes, it's very much so.
You don't get to commit suicide like in a vacuum. That was right. It's great to, I don't know, have these thought experiments in which you do and you can just pull the cord and no one is around you is ever affected by it. But like it doesn't have to even be like the people nearest and dearest to you who have to deal with your suffering, right? It's like if you throw yourself off a cliff or you throw yourself off a building, right? They're just the other people
littering
who are like strangers who have to deal with the fact that you did that. And that's right, and it's traumatic to you and it's traumatic to everyone who witnesses it, both like in the real life witnesses it and the ripple effects out there. So it's like, yeah, I guess in theory, like, oh, you can put someone into existence because like, yeah, they have the choice to pull themselves out of it, but you don't get to do that without ripple affecting everyone around you in a drastically negative way.
So they made a good point to the glibite that suicide doesn't just affect the person who kills himself. Look at Jaiwen Huang and how his death sent a ripple through the antinatalist community. And of course he had friends.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like I bring up Ji-woon sometimes as like a kind of a reminder of some of the information hazard that could happen in the community, and maybe to be a little bit more careful about how we talk about these subjects. And also, I don't know if there's a responsibility or an obligation, but it would be nice if we were a little bit more kinder to each other in this community. But I think that's being very idealistic. But yeah,
friends and family as well. I also like that the moderator called his comment glib, which it was.
In fact, you had mentioned a one-child policy, and I posed, do you have a right to have a child? If we consider Ruley's argument, question number 12, concludes the best reason to procreate, she considers all these arguments, is in order to experience the parent-child relationship, is what she had said is sort of the best possible reason for procreation. But adoption offers a viable and worthwhile alternative to procreation for those who want to parent. Adopting an already existing child does not make one complicit in the potential harms of procreation, nor does it add a new person to an overpopulated world. Instead of, if someone wanted to have a child in that case, must they be required to adopt first before making a new one? Would that be sensible? Would that be disagreeable? Does someone have a right to have a child?
Back to the question of, do you have a right to have a child? And now I'm thinking, yes, because it's the independence of your body, right? Like saying no, you don't have the right to have a child is saying no, you don't get to do with your body as you please.
Right, but
it's the sort of same, right? It's
but you are using your body to hurt someone else, because bringing someone into existence, you're harming them.
Okay. No, how about no? I disagree.
I mean, that's
But
you
you
bring
aren't
someone into
killing
existence
them,
to
right?
die. Yes,
Who
you
is
are
actually killing
okay,
their
so
child?
so it,
You can use your body to hurt someone. If they're in your body, you have a right to harm them, right? But yeah, I think this is something Life Sucks and I could disagree on. I think bodily autonomy rights outweigh this prohibition. I'm 100% against government intervention in what people do with their bodies. Just on a practical level, I mean, people will go to war and battle that shit out if we ever tried to do this. And yeah, ethically, I don't think it's sound. But I think this is something Life Sucks and I can go back and forth on. I don't know what to call it. Forced... or I'll put one-child policy. Harming to avoid. So harming to avoid harming in a weird way.
if someone murders my non-existent child, it'd still be my fault because I set up the murder to happen.
Yeah, and someone.
Whoa, I missed that. What? If someone murders a non-existent child? What? I am confused.
Okay. No, how about no? I disagree.
I mean, that's what
But
you
you
bring
aren't
someone into
killing
existence to
them,
die.
right?
Yes,
Who
you
is
are
actually killing
okay,
their
so
child?
so if someone murders my non-existent child, it'd still be my fault because I.
Okay, that went over my head. I don't know what that meant.
Because I set up the murder to happen.
Yeah, and someone forged the bullet, right? There's culpability all over, but I think it's probably the murderer most at, if we're sticking someone in jail.
Well, I mean, when you have a child, they're going to die, so it's going to happen someday. So.
The moderator challenged my argument that procreation is the equivalent of murdering someone, and so-called accidental births are included because failing to get an abortion is letting the murder happen. That is, if abortion.
This seems wrong. So he's arguing that starting a life is equal to ending a life. That goes against what Benatar's argued. I'm just going to make a note of that. Life sucks. Starting a life is equal to ending a life. I don't have to debate him on it. I'll just ask him for clarification. Murder. Yeah, okay. All right.
Abortion is available, of course. The moderator compares my claim with the idea of blaming the person who manufactured a bullet for a crime where the bullet is used to kill someone. There is an unethical practice called war profiteering, which is a real thing, and companies like Raytheon are culpable for the harm their weapons cause. But that comparison doesn't really work here because a manufacturer of bullets doesn't know the fate of the bullet. Yes, they know they are designed to kill, but they can also be used for target practice. Bullets are very useful for stopping crime, for killing intruders, for saving lives. A parent knows without any shadow of a doubt that they are imposing a death sentence on someone. So I think it would have made more sense for him to compare procreation.
Antinatalism Cougar, well, yes. Because as you bring life into existence, you subject it to death.
To an arm.
Conundrum. Starting a life. Why are you guys all up right now? I'm sorry. Thank you all for joining me on the live stream. I hope you're having a great Saturday night. Conundrum. Starting a life is not equal to ending the life, but starting a life necessarily leads to death. I think that's what he meant. So procreation entails a death sentence. Yeah, but he's saying it's equivalent to murder. Do you think that's right? Antinatalism Cougar, LOL. Night Shadow, my name should explain why I'm awake. Yeah. Okay, so is there a difference in a metaphysical sense of, or the quality of, okay, is this equal? A death sentence and murder. So Life Sucks said procreation is like murder, not a death sentence. Or yeah, Forever Films. Seriously, why are we all? I shouldn't have asked that. We're all having fun. We're all having a good time listening about death and antinatalism. And from Life Sucks. What a great Saturday night.
Arms manufacturer who makes a bullet specifically for a hired assassin with a specific target in mind. And if he really wants to compare it to procreation, the victim's only crime would be to just be born. Obviously, that's not deserving of the death penalty.
So what are the actual...
Okay, but he went from, like, a death sentence and murder and procreation. Like, are all these equal? Like, do you guys think that procreation is equivalent to a death sentence, which is equivalent to murder? So when somebody creates life, they're murdering in a way. Like I don't think they're the same.
Odds of getting consensus of antinatalism from
Hey, I get that question a lot. I mean, people are coming around to it more, just like we've seen veganism increase a lot over the the past even just 5 years. People are becoming more aware of climate change, that kind of thing, and recycling more. And so it's hard to say. I mean, I'd like to hope.
Mark, you are right. Too much equivalence going on. Yeah. Yep.
A bit more people. I mean, if I can just stop one person from having a kid, I think that I will have done something good.
Not sure how to parse it. Neither am I, but I'm going to make a note, not for the panel discussion, but for like myself to explore that more. I don't know what to write. Is because Jimon wrote a book called Procreation is Murder, and I totally forgot what was written in it. But yeah, it seems like a meme or a trope that does get brought up, and I want to explore that more. Procreation is murder / death sentence. Parse through. Yeah, I'm gonna look into that a little bit more, or ponder it a little bit more.
It seems like if you're antinatalist and then you die, like every antinatalist needs to go out there and convert a bunch of people, or else they all die, and then everyone's like, what the hell was that?
I don't know why people bring this up. Like, this one confuses me. Like, I didn't get antinatalism from my mother or my parents, right? Like, ideas they're just spread by communication, and we have the internet, we have the blogs, we have, like, literally, if I make, say, a documentary on antinatalism and then I pass away, then that documentary can continue to make more antinatalists. That has that potential. So this idea that, like, the idea dies out when we die out doesn't make sense to me, and it keeps getting brought up somehow. But anyway, Sid, it seems like the difference between shooting someone and slowly poisoning them to death. Interesting analogy there. Antinatalism Cougar. It's reminiscent of Meat is Murder, which alienated a lot of non-vegetarians. Yep. Yep. Conundrum. I think it's kind of the phrase, like meat is... Great minds think alike. It obviously isn't meant to be read literally. Cougar. Thumbs up, yeah.
All right, well, luckily...
that was a weird blip in history. Let's go have some kids, you know?
Yeah, I mean... yeah, well, see, that's one of the worst...
The suburbs with me.
That's just one of the worst arguments I've heard for natalism is, I want my kid to be a Christian or a Muslim or whatever. They want their philosophy to live on, but philosophy is not inherited, You can teach someone a philosophy, so I don't need to have kids to pass on antinatalism.
But I mean, so there is like a even if you're like more than anti-natalist, even if you're like anti being alive, like if you think that you would be better off to simply die right now, I don't know whether or not you think that, but there's still possibly like altruistic reason for you to continue on so that you can cut short other people's lives.
Well, make sure lives never come into existence. Yeah. And that philosophy is called pro-mortalism. The idea that it's better to die sooner than later.
Sorry, pro-mortalism.
Yeah, the idea.
Speaking of pro-mortalism, Conundrum, help me out here. So in your video, did you not make a difference between the idea that ceasing to exist earlier than later is a form of pro-mortalism, but from an Epicurean standpoint or the badness of death standpoint, say for the annihilation account or for the deprivation account, that it could be also said from daily negativity that death is good for the one who dies. So the opposite of like another alternative view to deprivationism, Epicureanism, it could also be pro-mortalism. Now, just because death is good for the one who dies, it doesn't therefore follow that you ought to cease to exist as soon as possible if there are external circumstances or factors in play to continue to exist. There's a slight nuance and change there, that ceasing to exist ASAP, like you could hold that position that it's best to cease to exist, but death is still a harm to you. So if you can say, your life is going to have a whole bunch of bads, and it's actually bad that you die, but it's still better that you cease to exist as soon as possible. I feel like those are two different schools of thought when people talk about pro-mortalism. I don't even know if I'm articulating it right. But what do you guys think? Night Shadow. All right, well, I'm taking off. Have a good night. Have a good one, everyone. Take care, Night Shadow. Hope you have a good night. Have some good rest.
Yeah, it's better to die sooner than later. Like, it would be better for me to die right now, because I won't suffer anymore.
And why are they ridiculously wrong?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said earlier, that would hurt my wife immensely, my mother and my dogs and all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't convert anyone to veganism or anything.
But when you think about the alternative of having to drive home from Ann Arbor in this...
Interesting. So he didn't bring up like a deprivation account or an annihilation account. It was like our relation to other people, which I mean, like, is a thing. I mean, Conundrum. One could say that losing a leg or dying is better than, but still bad, than losing two legs, continuing to live. Okay. Sid, doesn't Daily Negativity's video go over that? Which one? Forever Wolf? Right. That's the speed of promortalism thing I've seen talking about, yeah. One thing that... So here's the thing, like there's like when I'm talking about like antinatalism, there's like the antinatalist movement and social community versus antinatalism philosophy. When it comes to pro-mortalism, there's like in the philosophical literature it says like it's death would be good for the one who dies, but I've never seen that attributed to imposing that on other people. I haven't seen that. It would be... I mean, in the case of non-persons, I've seen that made. I mean, Belshaw argued that. So, yeah. But the one thing I disliked about that Belshaw interview is that I think I think, Amanda, you asked him this. Like, is he a pro-mortalist? Or, no. How do you define pro-mortalism? And I think he dodged the question. He's like, well, it's not on me to either defend it or define it. And I'm like, well, if you use it in your freaking paper... Actually, I don't know if he used it in his paper. Actually, yeah, he did. So, like, you should defend the term. Anyways, I didn't feel like he clarified that well enough, in my opinion. I think it's still up in the air how people define it, what it is. I think for the most part, people believe that it's just good to cease to exist as soon as possible. I think that's the most common way it's being used. He totally dodged the question, yeah.
Weather?
I know. It's gonna suck. Yeah.
Wait, were we just talking of like almost getting to the point of like by nature antinatalism almost sort of evolutionarily cuts itself out? Because unless there's this sort of threshold, I'm sure you could come up with some differential equation to figure it out.
You don't even have to. You're getting all fancy with it. You're just saying, of course, anything that's evolved to live, where the game of life is not going.
Right. But then there's some threshold where every antinatalist must spread their ideology to others for it to continue existing until the end of the species.
So the question was, will there ever be a consensus on antinatalism? In other words, will a majority come around to the idea? Of course, it won't require a majority. And as Mendham says, the most civilized countries are already in negative birth rate territory, so you could say some nations are already experiencing an antinatalist culture, even if they don't consciously know it. So as you just heard, some of them fell into the trap of thinking that philosophy is somehow inherited. I don't really understand this argument because just one antinatalist like
I don't understand it either. Yeah.
Mendham or David Bennett.
He does use the term and says that if you talk about it, you should explain yourself, but also that it wasn't on him to define it, lol.
Yeah. Could potentially spread the position into the future all by themselves. Not every antinatalist needs to be an outspoken activist. Or through logic, people can come to the conclusion themselves quite easily.
Question number 10. Emile Saron begins The Trouble with Being Born, this fine little tome right here. 3 a.m, I realize this second, then this one, then the next. I draw up the balance sheet for each minute, and why all this? Because I was born. It is a special type of sleeplessness that produces the indictment of birth. And with this I ask, why might bouts of insomnia cause us to question our birth? Why might we question our existence or the existence of others when depressed and not when triumphant? That is, why do we consider, why am I here? To be or not to be, only when we're sad.
The moderator then reads question 10, which deals with Emile Cioran, and the idea that we contemplate the shittiness of life more when we can't sleep. I think that the answer to this is obvious, because sleeplessness is a common form of suffering, and suffering makes one more aware of how intrinsically life sucks. But let's listen to what people had to say.
I feel like I do literally feel thankful for existence, like when I feel something great and wonderful. Like, I don't know.
I think it's fair to say that when people are depressed, they think about whether they want to be here at all a lot more than when they're happy. Like that's pretty. I don't think that's very controversial or far from true. I think that's kind of like a fact. Yeah. I mean, like it's fair. It's worth questioning, but.
Yeah, I'll admit that the fact that I'm a depressive realist. I mean, I've been on lithium. I've been on Prozac. I've been on Paxil.
I like how he describes depression as depressive realism. It's an interesting framing.
I've been on a few other drugs. And yeah, that does, I'm sure that had something to do with it, but although I hated people use that argument against me and say, oh, well, only depressives, are antinatalists, but I think that just gave me insight.
Well, yeah, that's the whole depressive realism claim, right? I think it's fair to contemplate motivated reasoning as well. But in either case, you should just look at the arguments, in my opinion.
The conversation was wrapping up here around the 2-hour mark, but then one of the glib people tried to make a utilitarian case for natalism.
Yeah, I just don't find that convincing. I mean, what are we going to do? Like put slaughterhouses and McDonald's on Mars? I mean, what the fuck are we doing? We're not doing anything important. The only thing we can do is prevent suffering, in my opinion. So I mean, there's no way to reach aliens. So just.
It's a term that means depressives are more likely to be realistic. Oh, I know what the term means. It's just if you're if you're suffering from depression, most people don't say I'm a depressive realist, right? And I'm a bit on drugs because of that. So it was an interesting label. It's mild depression is connected to the depressive realism outcome. But yeah.
Just forget about that. So what can we do here? And we can just, prevent more pain and death and suffering for the next billion years. And that's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that the human race does go extinct and then the animals just keep on killing each other for another 1.5 billion years. That seems like the worst thing.
So I'm yeah, that brings up the curious point of how far do we go in imposing this? How far?
Yeah, I mean,
suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was saying. I don't know if we should just force people not to have kids, but we can do some things like, just incentivize having less kids.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going to pay more taxes if you have more kids. You're not going to get more entitlements, that kind of thing.
Oh, but yeah.
Start small.
The animals, though, it seems like if we are taking the.
Hot take. I'm against that. I'm against imposing more taxes from if you have more kids, or you should take away child tax benefit or whatever. I know I'm a minority in that, but that's my hot take.
Premise that life is bad. We should at least continue to exist long enough to be able to sterilize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we should stay around. We could start in the oceans or something. I've heard different plans about this, like taking care of predatory species first. Because they cause so much harm to the herbivores and stuff. I think that's a good goal.
Then someone makes the claim that it may be unethical to infringe upon wild animals in any way, and this is basically the vehement or the vegan environmentalist conservationist perspective.
The animals are consenting to be anti-natalist, is all I'm going to say. So,
it's
following
true.
your frame of logic, I'd say it's probably, even if I agreed with your frame of logic, I'd kind of say it's probably still immoral to get rid of, or to sterilize the animals, because they're not consenting.
But is it moral? Is it moral to let them rip each other's faces off?
There's a non-aggression principle thing where they're causing harm to others or their future offspring.
Yeah, well, a philosopher.
then you're sort of considering it from their point of view, whereas I would say you directly taking the action of sterilizing them is something that you've done upon yourself, that you've taken that choice.
Letting them rip each other's faces off versus doing something to them.
Right, can't just let this happen. And
Why not? I mean, because
it's
whether or not
horror,
you happen to exist or not, that was going to happen without you, so it's definitely not your fault or responsibility or burden.
So a philosopher, his name's Mendham, he's on YouTube, and he has the good bus driver metaphor. I mean, do you want to just let a bus just drive all over the fucking place with no driver and just smash into everything, basically what evolution has done? Or should we control it?
Why are you the driver?
Because we have the intelligence.
There's a requirement to justify supremacy.
Sid. There was some TED Talk on depression that cited a study where optimists overestimated their video game scores by 1,000 times, while pessimists were pretty close. Yeah, that makes sense.
Supremacy, right? If we are having conversations about consent, to how, right? And lots of vegans make a claim of no human supremacy as a premise. I don't take it that you do based on what you said here.
Well,
right?
I think
but if for you to be the bus driver, that you have to have a justification for saying we are taking the reins and that should be done. And so there is a claim of supremacy and subjugation in my.
Oh, that goes back to that anthropocentrism thing about imposing on other sentient creatures.
My mind at play there, if we can accept that some animals are sentient, or at least that they are right, they are in this consequential.
Okay, well, look at it this way. So I just kind of see animals as basically stupid or retarded humans, basically. I mean, we all come from the same DNA. We're basically the same. So if you had a bunch of retarded people, in a room, killing each other, shouldn't you step in and stop them, or should you just, that's cute. Okay. Just let it go. Oh, I can't violate their consent. I just got to let them, kill each other.
As I mentioned earlier, these people were all carnists. They are fine with torturing animals unnecessarily.
I mean, so if you look at, actually, I think this is my criticism of Belshaw, because he said, because I brought up the marginal cases argument about like cognitively impaired humans and also children, and I said, would it be okay that he would kill non-persons? And I think he said yes. So I wonder if I think I would pose this question to Life Sucks. Actually, yeah, let me see if I can write that down. I don't even know what to say. Okay. If you see animals as cognitively impaired humans, then would it be okay to impose ceasing to exist on them for their sake? Because I feel like that could go to farmed animals too. So like wild animals, farmed animals, marginal cases for humans. Could expand, yeah.
To feed themselves. So of course they're going to reject the logical evidence that humans and non-humans are basically sharing the exact same life experiences.
It feels like as we're sort of progressing, I'm getting this perception of antinatalism as the ultimate anti-consent, like you are basically putting this divine stature to your ideals and enforcing them at all costs because you're saying the end goal is to have.
It's a good counter argument. So my question would be, if you if you bring up consent violation as a harm, why is it okay to do that as an ends to justify a means?
No life.
Well, first I want to say that not all antinatalists believe that. Some antinatalists are.
Farewell Films. But I have to think that an extinction level scenario is a very different circumstance when we are considering the marginal cases question. It may be less ethical when life goes on, but it is different when it's the last chance to make one decision over the other. I'll have to think about that.
Are purely human-centered, and they just think it's a very passive philosophy. Just don't have kids.
Right. Right.
But I think if you are an antinatist, you have to consider the animals, in my opinion.
Should we just not imprison criminals because that would violate their consent to be free? Should we not euthanize an animal with half of its face missing to end its terrible suffering? So he's just trying to make a dishonest claim that antinatalism is playing God when it's procreation that is doing so. The moderator asked us to speculate on how the world will end. This basically got into a mix of science fiction and doomsday scenarios, so it wasn't really on subject, but sort of interesting to talk about. I tend to side with derived energy.
Conundrum, did Life Sucks just smuggle in ephilism and antinatalist skin? Oh yeah, this whole thing is like a lot of ephilism from the start. Did you just get here?
Who foresaw nanotechnology and genetically modified viruses as taking us out in the next few hundred years. Someone asked me a question that I hadn't heard before,
what about
and that was...
What did he say about salad?
Right. But I think if you are an antinatist, you have to consider the animals, in my opinion.
Should we just not imprison criminals because that would violate their consent to be free? Should we not euthanize an animal with half of its face missing to end its terrible suffering? So he's just trying to make a dishonest claim that antinatalism is playing God when it's procreation that is doing so. The moderator asked us to speculate on how the world will end. This basically got into a mix of science fiction and doomsday scenarios, so it wasn't really on subject, but sort of interesting to talk about. I tend to side with Derived Energy, who foresaw nanotechnology and genetically modified viruses as taking us out in the next few hundred years. Someone asked me a question.
Oh, taking us out. I heard that. I misheard that. So the nanotechnology replicating so much. I think they call that gray goo, right? I think Seven mentioned that.
And I hadn't heard before, and that was, what is my opinion of the World Seed Bank in Svalbard, the Arctic island where Jaiwan Huang lived for a time?
What's everybody's feeling on the seed vault?
I think that
it's a good idea.
Really get you going.
I think it's great to preserve those seeds just in case you might need them someday. I mean that.
That makes no sense.
Well, plants don't experience pain, so
Yeah, it's no harm in having those seeds. I mean, if when the human race comes back, you want
so
them.
won't we prepare for the antinatalist Armageddon and have pods of embryos that have a lamb
Well, I mean, it's
uterus
just.
and
I mean, you want civilization. I mean, basically, that's the idea of civilization gets wiped out. I mean, you want to bring civilization back, and you want to feed people and stuff. You don't want them to suffer. So.
Wait, but then isn't it the whole goal of bringing these things back to our benefit? I mean, you don't want them to bring back their benefit.
I mean,
so
I
that
get
we
what you're
can
saying. You don't want the population to blow up again, but
yeah.
What?
I think
But
you might as well
you
use
can be
existence for the
against
people that still have to be here.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Like if nuclear warfare or whatever break out, right? Like, yeah, like yes, we may not want overpopulation to swell and all of that, but you do. If civilization got totally wiped out, like no one could find food or anything like that, like it feels wrong to let those people die, right? So you want something to, again, like, right, it's not, the whole point is not just like to exit, it's to gracefully exit and to ease towards the end of a civilization rather than just have people, crawling over the finish line and suffering till the very end.
He for some reason thought I'd be against it because I would want the human race to starve to death. But as you heard, someone reminded him that we want the human race.
Wait, he wants to end all life chance, but keep seeds? Yeah. Because we might need to be stewards, I guess. Sentient life.
To have a graceful exit, not a sloppy exit. The moderator had one more question on his.
But isn't that risky? It does sound risky.
Worksheet from Emil Sir.
Well, I don't know what. I don't know what seeds they were talking about, honestly.
Which basically said to just get over yourself, but it led to one person saying this.
It doesn't take much to kill yourself.
Oh, they bring back the killing yourself part.
To ease towards
well, plants don't experience pain, so
yeah, it's no harm in having those seeds. I mean, if when the human race comes back, you want them.
Won't we prepare for the antinatalist Armageddon and have pods of embryos that have a lamb?
Well.
Oh, Sid, yeah, that makes more sense. Agricultural seeds. Yeah, I get. Yeah, that makes more sense.
I mean, it's just. I mean, you want civilization. I mean, basically, that's the idea of civilization gets wiped out. I mean, you want to bring civilization back, and you want to feed people and stuff. You don't want them to suffer. So.
Wait, but then isn't it the whole goal of bringing these things back to our benefit? I mean, you don't want them to bring back their benefit.
I mean,
so
I
that
get
we
what
can
you're saying.
end.
You don't want the population to blow up again, but
What?
But you might as well
you
use
can be
existence for the
against
people that still have to be here.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Like if nuclear warfare or whatever break out, right? Like, yeah, like yes, we may not want overpopulation to swell and all of that, but you do. If civilization got totally wiped out, like no one could find food or anything like that, like it feels wrong to let those people die, right? So you want something to, again, like, right, it's not, the whole point is not just like to exit, it's to gracefully exit and to ease towards the end of a civilization rather than just have people, crawling over the finish line and suffering till the very end.
He for some reason thought I'd be against it because I would want the human race to starve to death. But as you heard, someone reminded him that we want the human race to have a graceful exit, not a sloppy exit. The moderator had one more question on his worksheet from Emil Saran, which basically said to just get over yourself, but it led to one person saying this.
It doesn't take much to kill yourself.
It does.
Sure.
It does. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. It takes more than you think.
Your body's own self-preservation.
Right. It is rebelling against you. Yeah.
That's fair.
And also, we didn't discuss this really, but Benatar in his book, Better Never to Abandon, which I
Is that Miss Life Sucks talking? I don't know.
I saw somebody had it here. Yeah, a big part of that is the optimism bias that humans have. They're biased to see things as having rose-colored glasses.
I don't think so. LOL.
You know, they think everything is better than it really is, and that's one reason why they don't kill themselves or become antinatalists.
I was about to bring up the opposite bias.
Yeah, people are way more
Pessimism
focused
bias?
on the negative because
Right,
you
like-
only die once, so we're like wired to pay attention to the bad a lot more than the good.
Yeah.
I don't think that's
Like, there's a reason clickbait
like a lot,
news and
yeah.
stuff focuses on negative because that's what gets people's attention and memory and focus.
This is, of course, coming from someone who has not read Benatar and doesn't understand that the optimism bias has been proven to exist in humans and in animals. What I should have done was polled the room. Show of hands. How many of you think you're going to get cancer and the cancer wins? I'd be surprised if any of them would have raised their hands, though the odds are that 1 out of 3 of them will indeed die that way. So they just use anecdotal evidence saying, oh, my friends are pessimists, or that the news seems to be pessimistic. You've all heard the phrase, if it bleeds, it leads in the news business. It's a business, and nobody wants to hear about what the most ethical humans did today. And they want to hear about what the worst humans and the most disgusting acts were. Just because many of us have morbid curiosity and like to engage in social pornography, it doesn't translate into being a philosophical pessimist. All the optimism bias means is that you don't think the worst things will happen to you. If people truly were pessimists like me, then they couldn't stand to watch the nightly news because the horror is just too real. And that's why I don't watch it anymore. It's because of their optimism bias that they get entertained by that shit. Because that will never happen to me or my kid. So I hope this video provided some food for thought. The experience did for me. One of the students came up to me and said sorry for counter-arguing so often, but his questions in particular were not offensive, and they can only help me strengthen my arguments. He also said that he will not reproduce, so that was great to hear. Only some of the glib comments irritated me, and I mentioned those. I've been researching and writing about this subject for years, and since for most of them this was their first time hearing about it, I thought they did okay. I was glad that there are so many young people there, because that's really antinatalism's target audience. If just one of them decides to find another hobby than reproduction, it would have been well worth it. I'd like to thank Barry Belmont and the U of M Bioethics Discussion Group for having me, and my fellow antinatalists from out of state for being there as well. As always, thanks for listening, and don't have kids.
We can't live this way. Feel me slowly fade away.
That's a pretty song.
Feel me slowly fade away. As far as the wind will take me. Every day I feel time slipping, passing, skipping by. All the words I could say just can't.
I love how he does that with, like, Life Sucks, how he puts that on the video. I don't even know how he does that, but it's so cool.
Really seem to stay.
It's so funny. He's like, life sucks. Now I want to go and dance. It's like, it's just, I don't. That was interesting. It did give me food for thought, and I'm glad that we watched it. You know what? Like, I was thinking, like, since he enjoyed this discussion, and if you want to call it a debate, like, there's a lot of things Life Sucks and I disagree on. I feel like we should have a debate. We should have, like, in the community, discussions of stuff that we disagree on. I'm gonna email him and see, maybe we could set up some debates. I could argue some of the things he's mentioned in here. I think that would be fun. Could work on his arguments. I could work on my arguments. Might be useful. Yeah. Fuck yes. Amanda. That would be great. Yeah, because, like, there's a lot of things I disagree with. Like, yeah. Not just with Life Sucks, but with, like, other people in the community. So it's like, maybe you could set up, like, events around that and work on, like, they can work on their arguments. We could all work on arguments and stuff like that, go back and forth. I think that would be useful. Yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that. Propose debate. I'm gonna say mock debate, just so it doesn't sound as adversarial. Mock debate between topics he brought up. Cool. Antina's Cougar, that would be great. CERN, I'm going to bed, but hope you have a good stream. Nearly 4 hours. Yeah. Hope you have a good night. Take care, CERN. I'm gonna be logging off soon too. Deathrock Cynical, do it. I'm sure he's down for it. Yeah, I'm pretty confident Life Sucks would be down for that. I still don't understand the purpose of an Ephelis saving seeds. Well, if we were to evolve again, we need food, I guess. I don't remember this seed argument at all, honestly. LOL. I don't really understand that either. Well, we need food, right? I don't know. Should I mark that down as one of the questions? What do you mean by seeds? Okay, you know, I'm gonna put it down anyway. What did you mean by saving seeds in your video to the college students? What did you mean by saving seeds as an Ephelist in your video to the college students? Yeah. And if he is someone who believes in blowing up the planet, where is he going to put the seeds? Where is the going? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe in a pod circling around the Earth. I don't know. Or circling around a moon. I don't know. That was a good video. It's going to give me some things to think about tonight while I go to bed. That'll either keep me up or, like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Well, folks, thank you for joining me on the live stream. It's been fun. I appreciate everybody that joined. And happy Saturday night. Is it? Well, it's Sunday morning, technically. I have 3 meetings tomorrow, so it's going to be... it's going to be one heck of a day. Yeah, thanks for joining, and I hope you all have a good night or good morning wherever you are, and I'll catch you on the next live stream. Take care, everybody. Cheers.